5 Live Formula One.
Formula One heads to Florida for the first of 3 races in the USA in 2023, and you'd be forgiven for thinking that this season, the longest ever in history, was set to fall the way of the reigning champion, Red Bull's Max Verstappen. But it has not been the case. With 4 races gone, it's his teammate Sergio Perez who is providing the championship challenge, and ahead of round 5, things are hotting up in Miami.
This is Formula One 2023.
But it's Max Verstappen, the 2-time champion, the reigning champion, who comes out of the final corner here in Bahrain, takes the checkered flag, wins the opening race of the season in absolutely dominant style, in what could be a very, very ominous start to the season for the rest of the pack. The checker flag is waiting. Sergio Perez wins from pole position in Saudi Arabia.
Wicked. Nice job, guys. Well done. Excellent result for the team.
The way Max pushed me throughout the race was really hard, but we managed to keep him under control.
And he is truly taking the championship fight to Max Verstappen. Perez wins again in Baku.
This is the next chapter for the Masters of Speed.
The red flag is out. There's no more time to restart it. Perez is your pole sitter. It is frozen as it is. Verstappen is 9th.
This is Formula One 2023.
If that doesn't whet the appetite for this evening's Miami Grand Prix, I'm not sure what will. How about this though? A tricky street circuit with a mixture of tight and twisty turns and incredibly long straights that run around the Hard Rock Stadium, surrounded by palm trees swaying in the wind. There's a few ominous grey clouds in the sky. We have a mixed up grid and a chance for a swing in the Drivers' Championship. It's all set up to be a cracker. Guiding you through all the coverage is myself, Harry Benjamin. Alongside me is former Renault Formula One driver Jolyon Palmer. And Jolyon, how was that for Estelle?
Yeah, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. The drivers did a good job of making this an enthralling prospect really yesterday, with incident aplenty. Miami came on the calendar last season. A lot of razzmatazz, loads of celebs and American flavour to the weekend, and the race was a little bit underwhelming, if we're honest. I don't think it's going to be the case today. Leclerc crashed into the barriers at the end of qualifying, and as a result, he starts 7th. He stopped Verstappen improving. He starts 9th, the championship leader. Lewis Hamilton had a bad day. He starts 13th, and it's going to be a real race, hopefully, of plenty of action with those guys coming through.
How easy or difficult do you think it will be for the likes of Leclerc, Verstappen, Lewis Hamilton to come through the field, though, this afternoon?
Verstappen's the man. He's surely got to come through in the Red Bull. So if we look at Verstappen starting 9th, his teammate and his championship rival Sergio Perez is on pole. I still think the aim for Max is to win this Grand Prix, even though he starts 9th. He's got such pace. The Red Bull is so fast at a straight line. There are long straights around this circuit, even if the DRS zones have been shortened slightly, so the overtaking will be harder than it was last year. I still think Verstappen can come through, maybe still challenge even for the win. Leclerc in the Ferrari, I wonder how his confidence is actually after another crash yesterday. He's been racking up a few, and he could really do with keeping it clean today as well, with just a little bit of pressure building on him. And Hamilton, Mercedes were really bad this weekend so far. Russell kind of lucked in a little bit to be 6th on the grid. He could have been down the lower end of the top 10 as well. Hamilton only 13th. Wasn't particularly happy with his car or his team yesterday. I think he'll come through, but how many points can he get at the end of this is going to be tough. Overtaking for the Mercedes, particularly last time out, was tricky because their top speed, unlike Red Bull, is not good.
Well, not long to find out. Turn 1 is certainly going to be spicy. The grandstands are filling up and the grid is absolutely packed as well, which is where we can find Christian Hugill.
And the grandstand right in front of me here on the start-finish straight, in fact on the very front row, is absolutely packed as thousands of American fans and fans from all over the world for that matter try and get a glimpse of their heroes. I'm next to Fernando Alonso's bright green, British racing green Aston Martin, and there was a little glint in his eye yesterday when I spoke to him after qualifying, when I suggested the possibility of a turn 1 run-in with Sergio Perez. He will absolutely fancy his chances down here into turn 1, and goodness me, the atmosphere on this grid is buzzing. Just under half an hour to race start, and it is already absolutely packed with drivers, team principals, celebs, very important people wearing all sorts of outlandish clothing. I'm not talking about myself, and I'm going to go and see who I can find.
Well, Christian, before you go off and find anybody, what are the skies doing? What's the weather like? Because we've been hearing about a few rumblings of rain, but has that gone away as we get closer to the Grand Prix?
We've had a couple of very light showers earlier, and for some live weather I will look up to the sky and there is cloud and there is sun poking through, but the winds have dropped a little bit compared to what they were earlier. As things stand right now, I don't think weather will play too much of a part, but one thing we've seen this weekend in true Florida fashion is that can change very, very quickly. I just wonder if I've got time for a quick word with the double world champion Mika Häkkinen. Mika, do you have a couple of seconds? Mika Häkkinen, double world champion. You've seen a fair few grids on your time. How does this one compare?
Well, I tell you, it looks amazing. I tell you, the Liberty Media has done a fantastic work. The Formula One has done a fantastic work. It's great. The fans finally can really get close to Formula One in every sector in terms of media. And this is the result. Of course, Netflix has done a great input for the whole thing. It's good to be here. You know, good feeling.
Who do you fancy?
Well, there's quite an interesting situation. There is a Haas team in a very good position now to score an incredible result. So that's a very interesting to follow. And look at it.
Nick, a pleasure to enjoy the race. Thank you so much, Harry.
Thanks, Christian. The atmosphere building up nicely, and well, because we have this new pre-race, or the race being opened from 50 minutes earlier now, we've got a new pre-race driver intro ceremony, which is the sound you can hear going on. We've got a 30-piece orchestra being directed by will.i.am from the Black Eyed Peas. It's titled The Formula, and it's part of an F1 series of inspired tracks that are going to make up part of his first solo album coming later this year. But if you cast your minds back to Texas in Austin in 2017, we had the boxing great Michael Buffer doing the introductions. It's a similar situation going on right now, except we have actor and musician LL Cool J calling the shots. We just had Kevin Magnussen come out for Haas with the smoke machines heading off, and now Esteban Ocon follows in the Alpine. The pom-poms are out, and this is fully America, isn't it, Jolien?
Tell me you're racing in the States without telling me you're racing in the States. You can hear it all in the background. LL Cool J announcing the drivers in reverse championship order, building it up. Bottas walks out in the Alfa Romeo. Starts 10th today, does Bottas. He's had a bit of a bad run, and he's a picture of concentration as he walks past will.i.am conducting the orchestra. Real showbiz event, this one.
Shades on for will.i.am as well, as next out comes Oscar Piastri. Unfortunately for him and his McLaren teammate Lando Norris, it's not been going the British team's way at the moment. They start at the back. Norris is 16th. Oscar Piastri's worst qualifying so far in 19th. As Hulkenberg comes out of the smoke, let's head back down to Christian.
I'm hoping to get a quick word with Vin Diesel. Stay with me. He's currently talking to my colleagues from Sky Sports. Vin Diesel, who hugged Lando Norris earlier in the weekend, and Lando told me nearly broke him. Just when I stood next to him, got arms the size of my head. I'm really going to have to, and Lando's on the screens in front of us, I'm going to have to be quite rude here. We're getting put to Sky Sports. Vin Diesel live on the BBC in the UK. What do you think to this Miami Grand Prix?
Oh my God, I'm so excited. I'm just blessed to be here. I love the fact that we're bringing in an international event. It does something. It unifies the world in a real way. It's what we're about. It's all love, always.
Vin Diesel there. Thank you very much indeed.
Nice get, Christian. Vin Diesel. The grid is absolutely packed with celebs, as you can expect. It's what set the precedent last year in Miami, and it continues, and then some for 2023. The first of 3 races in the States, of course. Next up for LL Cool J to announce is George Russell. He starts 6th, Jolien. We mentioned it, Lewis Hamilton down in 30th. Russell did manage to wrestle that Mercedes up into the top 6, but he's still feeling pretty downbeat about it.
Well, he's not here to be 6th, in the same way as Hamilton is not here to be 13th or even 6th himself. They're here for wins, the Mercedes duo. Russell, I mean, he joined the team at a bad time, didn't he? They were dominant for such a long time. Then Hamilton had that ding-dong season with Verstappen, and it went down to the wire. Russell joined the team after, and Mercedes just haven't managed to pick up the performance since he's joined, which is a shame for Russell because he's been toe-to-toe with Hamilton, showing really what he can you do. But today, starting from 6th, I think you'd be happy enough to finish roughly there, but it'll be maybe looking at a chance of podium. The reason is you've got Kevin Magnussen in a hat starting 4th and Gasly in an Alpine starting 5th.
Let's hand over to LL Cool J. And the 50-piece orchestra, or the 30-piece orchestra, sorry, I got carried away there. I added 20 more people. But will.i.am doing the conducting. Second on the grid, though, it's Alonso.
On the front row of the grid with his new team, Aston Martin. It's Fernando Alonso!
Fernando Alonso looking cool, calm and collected. What can Fernando do, Jolien, from second? It equals his best start of the season so far for the Aston Martin car.
I think he'll get fiery at the start with Sergio Perez, who walks out.
Viva la Mexico! Sergio Perez!
He looks relaxed, doesn't he, Sergio Perez? Viva la Mexico. Huge amount of support for Perez here. One of his nearest races.
Finally, the two-time world champion and the current championship leader. He's the man everyone has to beat, and the man who looks unstoppable. Turn it up for Max Verstappen! Max!
I do. You know what? I do kind of like this. Let's hear from LL.
Will you be unstoppable this weekend?
I made it a bit more difficult for myself, but we're going to have a good day. We're going to have fun.
You have a great day.
All right, thanks.
Let's go! Make some noise!
I think Mr. LL Cool J might have written that script before Verstappen was very much unstoppable.
They are our drivers.
Well, we are going to hand back to LL Cool J as we get ready for the anthem.
What's up, Will?
What's up, LL? To honor with the performance of the national anthem, please welcome Latin Grammy-nominated singer, Gale.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watch were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the
The grandstands on their feet for the American national anthem to kickstart this Miami Grand Prix. We're not far away from lights out. We've got Premier League action in the form of West Ham versus Manchester United currently going on. Let's head over to our reporter, Jonathan Overend.
We played 15 minutes of the second half and it remains West Ham 1, Manchester United 0. Said Benrahma's first half goal with the error from David De Gea, who's redeemed himself slightly with an excellent save in the second half. West Ham have had the ball in the net for a second time through Antonio, but the referee had judged him to have fouled De Gea shortly before striking the ball in. West Ham playing well in this second half. Some lovely moments from Declan Rice. West Ham have taken off the ineffective Weghorst and replaced him with Martial. It's West Ham 1, Manchester United 0.
Thanks, Jonathan. Back to the Miami Grand Prix here on BBC Radio 5 Live. Let's head down to Christian Hugill.
Gunther Steiner, we're stood by Kevin Magnussen's car up here in P4. What can he do from here?
hopefully getting into the points. That's what we are trying to. I mean, we still have to do it, but I think Kevin put himself in a good position to get into the points.
You're surely saying from here, not just points, podium, surely.
Don't get ahead of yourself, you know, just take it easy a little bit. But hey, if the opportunity arises, we are ready.
Go well, thanks Gunther.
Best start for a Haas in the form of Kevin Magnussen's 4th place. He'll start right behind Fernando Alonso. Are we expecting Magnussen to plummet down, or will he get his elbows out?
He'll probably do both, if we're honest. He's always aggressive, and I'm sure he's not going to back down from a fight early on. There are drivers around him he might think about just beating as well. Gasly and 5th he'll want to keep behind. It's Russell, Leclerc, Verstappen, maybe Hamilton that'll be the bigger threat to him, but Magnussen's been pretty quick all weekend as well, so 4th was obviously outstanding for Haas. It's their best start in a Grand Prix, even though Magnussen of course got that pole that was for the sprint last year. But interesting with good to start. That's like West Ham having a 2-0 lead, 3-0 lead against Man U right now, and you speak to David Moyes and he's saying, well, if we can get a draw that would be great. It's very negative speaking from the team that's in 4th.
Well, let's head back down to Christian.
Roger Federer, a very quick word for the BBC.
Yeah.
How much of a Formula 1 fan are you, Roger Federer?
I mean, I've followed it a lot, you know, throughout the years, of course, but we never connect with all the travels when the tennis tour is on a stop. Formula 1's in a different spot, so it was hard to get to races, so it's only my 3rd time at a race, and Miami is an unbelievable place, so I'm so happy to be here.
What are you making of it? You've seen your fair share of great sporting occasions.
Yeah, and I've played next door at the Hard Rock Stadium. I won there back in 2019 when the Miami tournament moved from Key Biscayne over here, and now seeing a Formula 1 track having been built right alongside it is incredible, and the energy in this place is just unreal, so super cool.
Pleasure to talk to you. Enjoy your afternoon.
Thank you too.
Great to hear from Roger Federer down on the grid there amongst these sports stars that are here on this Miami grid. Jolien, Pierre Gasly starts behind Kevin Magnussen in 5th for Alpine, who look like they've got a great turn of pace. But Laurent Rossi, the CEO of Alpine, piling on the pressure at the start of today, saying so far this season has simply not been good enough.
Yeah, clearly. They've got 3 points finishes out of a possible 8. This is a team that wanted to be closer to the top 3 than 5th position. They were 4th in the championship last year, wanted to step forward. And it was actually a pretty big game because the gulf between last year's top 3 and the rest was so big. But they've started this one miserably. No points in the last 2 races. They crashed together in Melbourne at the late restart. In Baku last week, it was a hopeless weekend really for them. Ocon ran along and nearly ran over people in the pit lane as he pitted right on the last lap. But it was a long gamble to minor points. Today, this weekend, they've turned up with a car that's working. They've had practice sessions to understand the upgrades that they bought last week. And they start 5th and 8th. So they are a team with big chances. I think the way that Verstappen's 9th, Leclerc's 7th, Hamilton's 13th, with those guys further down, so many other drivers, they're going to fancy their chances for some points, maybe a bit of a shock result today.
Well, as the helmets start to go on for the drivers as they get ready for the start of this race, let's head back down to Christian.
Christian Horner is the biggest threat to Sergio Perez, Max Verstappen today.
Look, I think he's got a few threats. I mean, first of all, Fernando Alonso on the front of the grid there, he's going to be very competitive at the start of the race. So, you know, the most important thing is get a good start with both drivers and then settle into the strategy.
And what's possible with Max, do you think?
Anything.
Anything. Have a good one, Christian. Thank you.
Anything is possible when it comes to Max Verstappen. You can't rule him out, but Sergio Perez will be hoping he can skate up the road and build enough of a gap that he doesn't have to worry about him too much, I suppose.
He might need to this weekend. He was on pole because he did a good lap yesterday, but more because Verstappen made a mistake at a crucial time. And he's been given an 8th-place buffer to his teammate. I agree with Christian there. His question to the other Christian was, is Verstappen the biggest threat to Perez? Of course he is. Red Bull is still up the road, and although Alonso will challenge at the start, and remember when they started in 1st and 2nd in Jeddah a few races ago, Alonso pinched the start into turn 1, led for the first few laps. They just surely don't have the pace to make it stick through the race. Red Bull will be in a league of their own, I think. Alonso will be hoping to beat the Ferraris, beat the Mercedes for a podium. So it's just how quickly can Verstappen come through and pressurise his teammate. I think we're going to be in for a really nice one because Verstappen this weekend has been considerably quicker than Perez. until Perez's last lap.
Well, let's see what they can do. Not long away. Let's head back down then to Christian.
Just walking back down the pit lane now as the media get kicked off the grid, and it's worth noting that the grandstands here are absolutely packed. There's been so much talk about whether F1's finding its spark in Miami, and right from sort of an hour before race start, the grandstands are absolutely packed. Massive cheers as the drivers come on, and particularly for Checo Perez, Sir Lewis Hamilton, and cheerleaders in front of me now. Hello, what's your name?
Maite.
Yeah. How excited are you for the race?
I'm so excited, I can't wait.
Exclusive reporting, the cheerleaders are excited.
Thank you, Christian. Excellent work. Well, we've got just about 5 minutes to go until we get this Miami Grand Prix underway. So let's time to get your 1 minute headlines with Carl Hartley.
Listen on BBC Sounds. This is BBC Radio 5 Live.
Thank you, Harry. Police in the US state of Texas say they believe a car that crashed and killed 7 people at a bus stop near a migrant centre may have been deliberate. At least 6 others were injured in the incident in the city of Brownsville near the Mexican border. The King's coronation concert at Windsor Castle is underway. Actor Hugh Bonneville, who's hosting the event, says there are surprises along the way. Take That, Lionel Richie and Katy Perry are among the headline acts. Earlier, the Prince and Princess of Wales met crowds celebrating as thousands joined coronation street parties across the UK. London Mayor Labour's Sadiq Khan wants urgent clarity from the Metropolitan Police over the force's treatment of protesters during yesterday's coronation. More than 50 anti-monarchy demonstrators were detained. The force says it acted in a proportionate manner. And the White House says it doesn't believe Syria merits readmission to the Arab League after its members voted to lift Damascus's suspension. It was thrown out more than a decade ago after Bashar al-Assad's regime brutally put down pro-democracy protests.
BBC 5 Live.
We're building up to Saturday night's Eurovision 2023 final in Liverpool.
Speaking to acts, old and new, organisers and fans.
When you go on the street, people are there together.
Every year is something completely different. Ramping up the celebrations ahead of the biggest song contest in the world.
Instead, I wrote a song. On Friday night's 5 Live Drive, we'll be joined by some previous winners building up to the main event.
And on Sunday morning's breakfast show, we'll tackle the fallout, the winners and everything in between.
Eurovision 2023 on 5 Live
and BBC Sounds. Formula One on 5 Live.
Just a few minutes away then from lights out here in Miami for the 5th round of the Formula One World Championship. Formula One driver Jolyon Palmer alongside myself, Harry Benjamin. We haven't spoken yet, Jolyon, about the home hero, Logan Sargeant, on home soil, and it really is home soil from him. Grew up about 20 minutes north of here in Fort Lauderdale. Sadly for him, though, he starts last.
Yeah, plenty at the home, less at the hero for Sargeant this weekend. Knows this place because he grew up down the road, as you said, and it has not helped him through the weekend. The problem for Sargeant is that the performance has been so close between all of the midfielders, and it is basically a front end and then a front end consisting of 2 Red Bulls and then everyone else. And Sargeant, he's not been terrible at all. He's just been a few tenths away from his teammate, but with that, Albon starts 11th, his teammate, and Sargeant, the American, is from the back of the grid. So loads of work to do for Sargeant.
Well, we'll see if he can make his way through the field. His teammate, Alex Albon, starts up in 11th.
Right, interesting information coming through. Enough of the showbiz, enough of the glamour. It's time for the race, and the tyres are interesting. Perez is on the medium tyre. We expected this to be a one-stop race. The top 7 on the grid, Perez down to Leclerc, all start on the mediums. Ocon in 8th is on the hard, but more crucially, Verstappen is also on the hard tyre. So they've got a split in strategy. Hamilton's on the hard further back. Those guys are going to go longer into the Grand Prix. Stroll is one to watch out for. He's 18th with his teammate on the front row in the other Aston Martin. He's on the hard. So those guys are going to go longer into the race, but Red Bull have split the strategies of their 2 cars. So if Verstappen can work his way through earlier, he might have a chance later on in the race. They'll be on different strategies, and with a chance of a safety car or anything else, he'll have a medium set of tyres to finish on. Really? But it will make his early laps a little bit harder on those on the hard tyres. They'll have less grip off the line.
Yeah, really interesting that as well. The two McLarens at the back, Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri, starting on the soft tyre. So for them, gambling everything and just trying to make up as much pace as they can in the opening stages and seeing what comes their way. And we are just mere minutes away from getting this formation lap underway, and it will be 57 laps of this Miami Grand Prix. If you didn't hear it in the Checkered Flag podcast, Palmer, prediction for the race win?
I still think Verstappen can do it. Verstappen from 9th. It's going to be it's going to be a great battle, I think, between the two Red Bulls. Perez will not scamper away with this, even if he might make an early break.
Well, I'm still going to hold on to my Fernando Alonso. You never quite know what it's going to be for the Spaniard, who will start on the front row alongside Sergio Perez as the grid starts to disperse. We're just about set then for 57 laps of racing around the Miami International Autodrome for round 5 of the 2023 Formula One World Championship. A mixed up grid. Anything could happen. It's time for the Miami Grand Prix. On pole position then, his third career pole, second in 2023. It's Sergio Perez in the Red Bull, alongside Fernando Alonso in the Aston Martin. He equals his best start of the season so far. Carlos Sainz, his best start of the season as well, from third, in front of another best start ever for Haas, if you exclude the sprint pole from Brazil last year. Kevin Magnussen in fourth, in front of Pierre Gasly in the Alpine. George Russell in a struggling Mercedes starts from sixth, in front of Charles Leclerc. A crash at the end of qualifying and a gearbox change. No penalty for him, though. He keeps seventh spot, ahead of Esteban Ocon in the Alpine as eighth. Max Verstappen, how quickly can he carve through the pack from ninth? Valtteri Bottas, and a turn of form perhaps for the Alfa Romeo, starts from 10th. Alex Albon in the Williams is 11th, in front of Nico Hulkenberg. Lewis Hamilton with it all to do from 13th position, in front of Zhou Guan Yu. Nick de Vries outqualifies his teammate for the first time in the AlphaTauri in 15th. Lando Norris is 16th, Tsunoda 17th. Lance Stroll, the big name to drop out of Q1, 18th. And the final row of the grid, Oscar Piastri and the home hero, Logan Sargent. Well, formation lap underway then as Sergio Perez leads them around this Miami International Autodrome. Let's head back down to Christian.
One of the key things this weekend has been the track surface. Recently been relayed, slippy at the best of times, but especially slippy off the racing line this weekend. Who's going to be brave on this first lap, and will we see carnage?
Well, that will be the question. All eyes will be on turn 1 and how quickly people can get off the mark. Rain early in the day, cleaning up the track a little bit. Grip is going to be even more of a premium, do you think, than it was at the start of Friday?
It could well be. It was torrential rain yesterday evening, overnight and this morning, so the rubber will very much be washed away. Already drivers were struggling going offline, finding no grip at all, and that's part of the reason we've had so many incidents this weekend. Should make overtaking a little bit harder in some ways, but in other ways it'll make mistakes more likely, and that can always lead to overtaking chances as well. So coming into the final corners here, Perez bunching the pack up through the slow corners. He needs to get a good start. If Alonso will try and fight him into the first corner. Alonso's on the inside. It's not the longest of runs to turn 1, but we know he'll have a fight. He loves a fight, and that will just hold Perez back. Perez wants to scamper away as soon as he can.
Let's give you an update on the drivers' standings as they head into this Miami Grand Prix. Max Verstappen leads with 93 points, but the gap is only 6 ahead of his teammate Sergio Perez. Perez, perhaps with the initial advantage then, starting on pole. Fernando Alonso is third, and really best of the rest. Hamilton and Carlos Sainz, the top 5. Charles Leclerc in 6th, ahead of Russell, Stroll, Norris and Hulkenberg. That's the top 10 in the drivers' standings. You're listening to the Ferrari of Carlos Sainz just line up in his grid spot. 270,000 people attending this Miami Grand Prix weekend, and it certainly feels like the atmosphere has ramped up. The phones are out ready to get the pictures, get the Instagrams on footage, and enjoy the second ever race here in this Miami International Autodrome, which runs round the Hard Rock Stadium, home of the Miami Dolphins NFL team. The team principals watching on from the garages and the pit wall, and we await the green flag at the back of the pack. Piastri and Sargent line up and it will be Fernando Alonso in the green Aston Martin. Sergio Perez is on pole in the Red Bull. It's eyes to the lights and foot to the floor as we go racing in Miami. It's a good start from Perez, who cuts across immediately on Fernando Alonso. Alonso tries to sweep round the outside. Carlos Sainz tucks in third. The front three is as they stood. Gasly's managed to get a good start. The house of Kevin Magnussen has lost a couple of positions, but Perez away well.
It was all fairly clean. Perez got away nicely and immediately chopped to the inside to make sure Alonso had no funny business up the inside of him into turn one, covered off the lead, and now he can focus on getting his head down and breaking the DRS of Alonso immediately. There was a big lock-up further back. Everyone else was fairly clean. Hamilton's lost one place, as has Verstappen, on their respective hard tyres. But I think it was Norris who flew into the first corner, had a big smoky lock-up further back in a McLaren.
Yeah, Nick de Vries as well, I think, has had a little bit of trouble on this opening lap. He's fallen towards the rear of this field, but as we make our way around this 3.36 mile, 5.4 kilometre track, it starts to tighten up in the mid-pack as Nico Hulkenberg tries a move down the inside of Alex Albon and makes the move stick. That's further back in the pack for 11th place.
Leclerc's passed Magnussen as well into turn 11, so Magnussen, a bit of a hero yesterday, starting fourth in the Haas. He's already down to 7th place, so maybe Gunther was not wrong to think if we can get points, that's good.
Yeah, Magnussen in 7th in front of Bottas. Verstappen still in 9th. Then comes Ocon. Perez is leading as they rocket down the back straight. 1.28 kilometres. DRS not yet activated.
Verstappen's also passed Ocon on this lap. Both of them are on the hard tyres, so that must have been around turn 11 as well for Verstappen. He lost a place at the start to Bottas, who's up to 8th place in the Alfa Romeo. It's a great start from him, finding 2 places in a car that hasn't looked like scoring a point since the season opener.
There's moves going down in the middle of the pack, and Alpha Tauri, I think that's Yuki Tsunoda, fighting with Zhou Guanyu. That's over 15th and 16th, getting quite dicey on the main straight as they head into turn 1. Out in front though, on lap 2 of 57, Perez leads ahead of Alonso, Sainz, Gasly and Russell the top 5. Leclerc, Magnussen, Bottas, Verstappen and Esteban Ocon round out the top 10. Then comes Hulkenberg and Albon. Hamilton still in 13th in front of Piastri, Tsunoda the top 15. Zhou, Stroll, Sargent, Norris and Nick de Vries fallen to 20th and last.
Hamilton as well then back up to where he started in 13th place on the hard tyres. Piastri's had a good start from 19th up to 14th, made 5 places on the opening lap as they hit the brakes hard again down into turn 11. I think Verstappen scythed up the inside of Valtteri Bottas on that corner. Yes, he did. Verstappen makes another place up into 8th. He's making light work of it so far. 2 passes in 2 laps, and next in his sights will be Kevin Magnussen, and this one shouldn't be particularly hard with K-Mag dropping back.
Well, you say that, just coming into that turn 11, Magnussen late on the brakes was really giving Charles Leclerc something to think about as they battle over 6th position, but the Ferrari superior to the Haas. Magnussen holding firm though for the time being, but Verstappen piling on the pressure.
DRS will be enabled as they come out of the final corner. Get on the throttle, squeeze it down, arc through a left, then a right, flash past us, and in towards turn 1. And Perez has broken the DRS zone. 1.2 seconds he's ahead of Alonso. Not a huge amount in it, but it's enough that Alonso is not within the 1 second and cannot benefit from straight line speed on 3 occasions around this lap. So that's crucial for Perez. And now for anyone else, there will be DRS available to make some overtakes.
Well, as we get Logan Sargent coming into the pits to change his tyre, we've got an update in the Premier League, West Ham versus Manchester United. Jonathan Overend.
10.5 minutes remaining. It was a 7 o'clock kickoff here in East London. West Ham still leading Manchester United 1-0. Benrahma's first half goal, and they're playing really well, West Ham, in this second half. They've had 2 goals disallowed. Souček's header narrowly offside. It's West Ham 1, Manchester United 0.
Front wing damage for the Williams of Logan Sargent. That's the reason he's in the pit lane. You're listening to Kevin Magnussen in the Haas down the inside of Verstappen. He's fighting with Leclerc, I should say, actually, the Scarlet Red Ferrari. He's managed to get through on Leclerc and put the Ferrari behind him, but gets a little bit squirrely coming into turn 17, approaching the long back straight. Further in the mid-pack. Magnussen leading Leclerc and Verstappen. What a move from Magnussen.
Yeah, brave from Magnussen. Looked to the outside at turn 11. Leclerc covered the inside, and then he had the inside for turn 12. Leclerc's going to come back at him, though, into 17. Magnussen got all out of shape at turn 16, and that's going to give Verstappen a chance to get in the fight as well.
They both nearly take each other into the wall, but it's Charles Leclerc who gets back through as they head down the main straight. Magnussen gets DRS, so does Verstappen, and they take either side of Charles Leclerc and make their way through into turn 1. Verstappen up into 6th, Magnussen in 7th, Leclerc down 2 spots.
Lost out big time in the end, got back past into the final corner, but then both Magnussen and Verstappen had DRS. It was a 3-car drag race into turn 1, and no one was going to beat the Red Bull in straight line speed. Verstappen picks off 2 more cars and he's into 6th place. Next target to him is George Russell, and Leclerc for some reason just hasn't found the pace. I'm amazed that a Haas, who he passed early on, has come straight back past and actually now made the move stick.
Yeah, well, DRS now activated. Let's see if Magnussen can stick with Max Verstappen or not. Under DRS, Leclerc now right up behind him. Then comes Valtteri Bottas. Esteban Ocon in the Alpine is fighting with Magnussen's teammate Nico Hülkenberg over the final points paying position at the moment as they come into that really tight and twisty left and right of 14 and 15 out through 16 and onto the back straight.
Alonso did the fastest lap of the race on the last lap, had got the gap down to just above the 1 second mark, didn't get the DRS, and now Perez is responding on this lap. Fastest first sector of anyone, personal best in the middle, and it looks like he's just going to eke that gap back to 1.4 seconds now over Alonso, who's got Sainz right with him, just 1.1 seconds back. Then within DRS zone of Sainz, Gasly half a second, and then Russell 9/10 back. They're all in a bit of a train for third, and they will soon be joined by Verstappen, who pumps in the fastest lap.
Well, lap 5 then of 57 in this Miami Grand Prix. Sergio Perez started in pole for the Red Bull alongside Fernando Alonso and the Aston Martin. Had to cut across early on for Alonso into turn 1, but Perez away and well from pole position and starting to eke out a little bit of lead over the rest of the gaggle of cars behind him. Alonso and Sainz stay the top 3. You're listening to Lewis Hamilton in his Mercedes, started 13th.
Comes down into turn 1, has a tentative look to the inside of Albon in the Williams.
Hits that one. Okay, copy. Everything looks okay at the moment.
Yeah, got very close with Albon on his outside, and then there was Nico Hülkenberg on his inside, and it was just a little wheel-to-wheel tap right front for Hamilton against the left rear of Hülkenberg, and I think they've got away with it. Both are looking like they found a bit of pace now. And this is the sound of a bang in the back of Lando Norris from Nick de Vries, who was a little out of control in the first corner there, had a big lock-up, both front tyres. So it wasn't Norris, it was the man just behind Norris that caused that lock-up in a collision at the first corner. The stewards have looked at it and said, play on. It looked like de Vries was pretty out of control there and rammed the back of Norris, who's had to come into the pits already.
Norris then all the way down in 19th. Logan Sargent, who's also made a pit stop, is the only driver behind him at the Wellman. Good start for Oscar Piastri, who's managed to get up to 14th. Let's head down to Christian Hugo.
Nick de Vries can possibly class himself as a little bit fortunate not to have received a 5-second penalty. If we were talking football, I think you'd class that as seen them given. And just an update on Logan Sargent, when he pitted with front wing damage, he was stationary for 28.7 seconds and finds himself massively adrift at the back. Without any form of safety car or red flag, it is going to be Lewis Hamilton.
Car's definitely not feeling great. The front right. Right, front wing. I think front wing looks okay. I don't know if we're going to last this race. I was not seeing much in a straight line down the straight. Yeah, copy. That may just be the wind. There's a lot of buffeting going on.
So Lewis Hamilton there on the radio to his engineer Bono, speaking about the front wing. A bit worried that maybe he has picked up damage. Seems a bit downbeat at the moment, Jolien.
He's right to be. He's down in 13th and still stuck behind Alex Albon and Nico Hülkenberg, who were the 2 cars he was sandwiched behind at turn 1. And it was the little contact right front to left rear with Hülkenberg that did the little touch. I don't think there's going to be significant damage for Hamilton. He's still within DRS range of Albon, but they're just in a big train behind Kevin Magnussen, who is the cork in the bottle in 7th place. This is the sound of Max Verstappen, who is homing in now on George Russell. Battle for 5th.
out of turn 17 into the slight left-hander up through the gears. The sound you're hearing now is Esteban Ocon coming through the quick left-right of 14 and 15, has to bail out of it and cut across the chicane.
Bit bouncy for Ocon over the raised curbs there. You would have felt that in the cockpit. Sainz is going quickly, starting to put a bit of pressure on Fernando Alonso. Had set the fastest lap, which was then taken by Max Verstappen, who's going just 1/10 quicker than Carlos Sainz, the Ferrari driver running in third place. Alonso himself isn't going that slowly though. Still a second and a half down on Perez, was 4/10 quicker than the Red Bull on that last lap. So no one's escaping here. Perez has still got an Aston Martin, a Ferrari, and Gasly's not a mile away.
Okay, feels plan A minus 12 ready.
Plan A minus 12, so
that is a one-stopper, but coming in way earlier than they were intending, I think. We saw in Baku the hard tyres went on, and everyone pitted under the safety car and could still take the tyres to the end. I think Alonso wants more of the same here. He's obviously feeling like the tyres are going away a little bit, even though he did do his personal best lap of the race on the last one. Quite the minus 12 is quite drastic.
Max Verstappen currently in 6th place, chasing down the back of George Russell for 5th under DRS, closes up under braking but can't quite get alongside him on the straights here.
And these two aren't the best of mates at the moment, are they? Had a ding-dong in Baku at the start of the sprint. Verstappen went up to George Russell afterwards and started laying into him for causing the collision at turn 2. It was a bit over the top, and Russell called it a bit over the top, said it was a bit ludicrous. Verstappen's reaction to that one, a bit of beef in the last week about it, and now they find themselves, I don't think Max would have thought he'd be fighting with George Russell as soon as he is again, but now he's finding himself up behind the Mercedes, who has been really aggressive with him for the last couple of races. Russell will not give this place up easily.
No, he won't. And Pierre Gasly in the Alpine is just ahead of him in 4th as well. Really strong start to this Miami Grand Prix for the Frenchman, who has never scored points in any American Grand Prix since he started his career. Currently battling for 4th with Russell and Verstappen, who on that last lap around went even faster. Still holds the fastest lap. His teammate, though, 1.7 seconds the gap now over Alonso. Sainz catching half a second behind his Spanish rival.
Verstappen is very close behind Russell as they came through 11 and 12. Hulkenberg has had a lunge and a miss at passing Valtteri Bottas. That's for 10th place and a look at a point for Nico Hulkenberg. But Verstappen now tucked right in behind Russell. Will get the DRS, but so will Russell because he's tucked in behind Gasly in 4th place. So they're forming a bit of a train.
DRS zones shortened by 75 metres down through the gears. On the inside of Russell goes Max Verstappen, and he makes the move stick. Beautiful move from the Dutchman.
Yeah, really good. He did it on the brakes. That's what we like to see. Shorten the DRS zones, make them make a lunge, and Verstappen there just sent it. Russell wouldn't have expected the move.
Big vibration on the brakes.
And that maybe explains it. Russell, sometimes these radio messages are a little bit delayed, and he's been braking a little bit early. We know the Red Bull was quick on the straights, but it wasn't enough. The speed on the straights, it had to be done on the brakes, and Verstappen just sent it to the inside, committed, and by the time that Russell probably knew anything about it, it was too late. The Red Bull was there, and Verstappen takes 5th place. Really good move from actually a really long way back as well, about 3 car lengths Verstappen was back. Russell braking early and Verstappen braking late. The difference is Verstappen had the inside and makes the move.
Round of applause from the mechanics in the Red Bull garage. I was about to say I feared Verstappen might well be stuck in a bit of a DRS train behind Russell, who was behind Gasly, but no such case for Max Verstappen, who was ditched Russell and closed right up behind Pierre Gasly. The sound you're hearing is Pierre Gasly trying to maintain his position on Max Verstappen as we once again head down the long back straight. Will he get DRS? He should do. It's wide open for Max Verstappen. Can he close up onto the back of Pierre Gasly? He moves to the inside, late on the brakes for Max Verstappen. Down the inside of Pierre Gasly, gives him a bit of a squeeze for good measure. Verstappen through into 4th.
Gasly letting him through like he's a back marker there. Knows he can't fight with the Red Bull, but he's left the door a little bit open for Russell, who goes to the inside at turn 1, and that's a good move from George Russell.
Sparks fly at the rear end of that Mercedes. He goes a little little bit deep though. Can Gasly close up right behind him as we go into the first sector? The long sweeping S's, no, he cannot. Russell makes the move up into 5th. Sergio Perez leads the gap, 1.6 seconds to Fernando Alonso. Carlos Sainz is 3rd. Verstappen now 4th. Then comes Russell, the top 5, just in front of Pierre Gasly. Then it is Kevin Magnussen, Leclerc, Ocon, Bottas, the top 10. Hulkenberg, Albon, Hamilton in 13th. Yuki Tsunoda and Zhou Guanyu, the top 15. Lance Stroll, Nick de Vries, Oscar Piastri, Lando Norris and Logan Sargent last in 20th. Let's head down to Christian.
Lovely, brave, opportunistic driving from George Russell in his Mercedes, but meanwhile, opposite fortunes for his teammate Lewis Hamilton, who said to us yesterday that, well, P13 was pretty much where his pace was. He's not been able, 10 laps in, to make any progress from P13, and this is how far Mercedes have fallen. At the moment, the 7-time world champion Sir Lewis Hamilton is stuck behind the Williams of Alex Albon, who's ahead of him on medium tyres, whereas Lewis Hamilton is on hards, with Albon 12th and Hamilton 13th. It's a long afternoon for Lewis Hamilton.
See, I think there's really about 6 cars all stuck behind Valtteri Bottas in 10th at the moment. Mere 10th separate them. Bottas, Hulkenberg, Albon, Hamilton, Tsunoda not far behind, Zhou Guanyu. Lance Stroll has not been able to make any kind of gains really from his lowly starting position, down in 16th right now. Hamilton having a little look down the back straight at Alex Albon, but he's not close enough.
No, I think he's got to take a leaf out of Verstappen or Russell's book and do it on the brakes. Going to have to commit to one of these overtakes because the straight line speed alone isn't going to get him there against a Williams that's always fast in a straight. And they're all in a DRS train as well, so he's not got that overspeed by opening the flap in the rear wing. So Hamilton frustrated right now. Could do with these guys on the medium tyres pitting ahead of him. But then there's Nico Hulkenberg starts on a hard as well.
My gut tells me it's going to be a Plan A race.
So I think, again, that's the same as Alonso then, both on Plan A. Of course, it could be different Plan A's for the Mercedes v the Aston Martin, but I think we're looking at a one-stop. Those guys started on the mediums. It's a medium to hard, fairly standard race with a little more degradation than we saw last time out.
You're listening to the 7-time champion Lewis Hamilton down through the gears, through the right-hander, trying to control that Mercedes coming into the tight and twisty middle sector. The left-hander of 14, the right-hander of 50, and then you're in to a left-hand braking, almost 90-degree left-hander, which brings you out onto the back straight. He's close up behind Alex Albon. He's about 6.5, he's about half a second behind him, but right now can't find a way through, stuck in a little bit of a DRS train. Hello, Sergio Perez. Fastest lap on lap 12. No, not for long, because who nicks it? It's his teammate, Max Verstappen.
Well, it's about time Perez woke up in this Grand Prix. In a Red Bull that Verstappen is charging through the field in, Perez has still got Alonso on his tail. With that fastest lap, he's finally extended it to over 2 seconds, but Fernando's still got a clear sight of the race-leading Red Bull, and we're on lap 12 now, out of 57. Often this year we've seen Red Bulls just run away out front if they need to, and Verstappen is showing the pace that he can do. He's been pumping in fastest lap after fastest lap, even coming through the field. Now he's just 1.2 seconds away from Sainz. He's within, well, he's 4.6 seconds off the race leader still. At the moment, Verstappen is looking good in this Grand Prix. Perez hasn't done enough in the opening 12 laps. The only thing is, has he just been looking after those tyres, and can he unleash a little bit more when Verstappen closes in?
What do you reckon, Christian?
Well, it was notable how confident Sergio Perez was talking to his Carlos Sainz here.
It's just the front are struggling.
Copy. And this mid -1 is more towards plan B. They are looking good. They are quite quick.
Carlos Sainz then struggling with the fronts. His engineer giving him some feedback there, saying what the others are doing around him, Christian.
Absolutely, and Sergio Perez, back to what I was just saying there, was so confident speaking to us down here in the media pen yesterday after qualifying, saying, I don't expect Max to be a problem unless there is, drama, a red flag, a safety car, that sort of thing. Well, on this pace, that is not a luxury that Sergio Perez will have. Max Verstappen very much looking like a problem with this pace, considering Sergio Perez's lead is only 2.7 seconds at the moment.
Absolutely. Further back in the pack, I was just thinking Kevin Magnussen was going well in front of Charles Leclerc in the fight for 7th. Magnussen and Leclerc going toe-to-toe in the early part of this lap. Haas, though, gets back through on a Ferrari. They're bringing Esteban Ocon into this fight. It's three-car battle for 7th at the moment, and it's Kevin Magnussen once again who wins out.
Oh, Magnussen will be giving Leclerc a migraine with how this first 13 laps have been going. Leclerc had him on lap 1. Magnussen got him back. The Haas be the Ferrari. Remember, Haas is a customer team to Ferrari. They have Ferrari engines. They have way fewer resources than Ferrari, who would hope to championship fight. And again, Leclerc came through. Magnussen fought back brilliantly around the outside. Again now on the brakes down to turn 11. Leclerc looks to the outside. Magnussen holds him back. They're side by side through turn 12. Leclerc shuffles to the outside, but Magnussen hugs the apex, and there's no way through there. He'll have another chance at 17 as they come through the fiddly bit of the chicane at 14 to 15. Now 16. Then Leclerc will get DRS again and surely make it stick, but this is hard work.
Fantastic work, though, from Kevin Magnussen, still holding on to that 7th spot. Fast forwarding up front, Perez has extended the gap now, 3.1 seconds, but now his teammate Max Verstappen is coming for 3rd place man, Carlos Sainz. Down the main straight we go, DRS open, into the braking zone, down through the gears, and the right-hander approaches. Verstappen not close enough to make a move there. He'll try and stick with the Scarlet Ferrari in front through the first sector.
The Red Bulls starting to find the pace now. Perez again, now dipping into the 1:31, so managing those tyres a little bit early on, starting to find the pace. The gap to Alonso now is suddenly over 3 seconds, and he's stretching his lead, and he has to, because Verstappen once again on the gearbox of Sainz. There they go, flashing past as they head onto the straight down towards turn 11, and Verstappen is right with Carlos Sainz, putting all manner of pressure on him, and he's taken fastest lap.
He's coming for him. Max Verstappen closes up onto the back of Carlos Sainz. Sparks fly out the rear of the Red Bull, down the inside for the Dutchman, who makes the move stick. Sainz can't give him anything back. Verstappen now up into the top 3 of this race. Next stop, Fernando Alonso.
This has been clinical from Verstappen. He's barely waited more than any overtaking opportunity. In fact, he's made some opportunities that don't look like they're opportunities with the move on Russell from so far back. He is coming through rapidly, setting fastest laps with the DRS, but in dirty air from the others, and now he's staring at the back of the Aston Martin in 2nd place. Alonso's not going to be too bothered about keeping him behind, because Sainz is right there, and Alonso just wants a podium here. He knows that there's no chance to keep Verstappen back. If he can fight too hard with Verstappen, Sainz will have a chance to pounce, which is exactly what happened with Russell and Gasly.
Start of lap 15 of 57 here for the Miami Grand Prix. Kevin Magnussen has just come into the pits. He has given up his position. Leclerc goes through. You're listening, though, to the sound of Max Verstappen going through the opening sector, the long S-bends that dominate the first sector here in Miami. Half a second now, the gap between him and Fernando Alonso. A sweet pit stop for the Haas of Kevin Magnussen, 2.7 seconds, and he's back out again. What tyres is he on? I didn't see. Did you, Johnny?
Hards for Magnussen, and he'll hope to go to the end on a tyre that doesn't degrade very much. He's had a brilliant first 15 laps, and the Haas crew did a good job as well. Verstappen slides down the inside of Fernando Alonso at turn 11. Easy as you like. Red Bull in 15 laps, a 1-2. Alonso was asked yesterday, when do you think you'll see the Red Bull in your mirrors? He said, let me have a stab, we'll go with 25. No, 15. It's been rapid from Verstappen.
Sergio Perez is being told plan A +5. So going a little bit longer. That's something to bear in mind, though, right? Because Sergio Perez and Max Verstappen on different tyres. Verstappen, theoretically, on the harder tyre that doesn't grain as much. So could this swing back around in Checo's favour later on in the Grand Prix?
He needs to have more pace than this, I think. The hard tyre and the medium tyre, the medium theoretically is quicker over 1 lap, is quicker up to a certain amount of laps, and then the hard will be stronger when the medium starts to degrade. Certainly everyone's been managing the tyres a little bit in this first phase, and we can see that with Perez upping the pace when he has to. But I just think Verstappen's got so much pace, and the way that he's side through the field, the gap, he's got into 2nd place, and the gap is 3.7 seconds. Perez has done nowhere near enough, starting from pole, and his teammate is 9th. Within 16 laps, they're 1-2, and the gap is 3.7 seconds. Ominous right now. He's got to hope that he's been nursing those tyres, or Verstappen runs into big trouble later on the mediums, as you say. But Oh, it's looking like Verstappen is on another planet so far.
He has, as you said, Jolien, made it look clinical so far. Pit stops happening on lap 16 of this Grand Prix. Let's get a West Ham Manchester United update from Jonathan Overett.
It's all over. Full time. West Ham 1, Manchester United 0. Big significance at both ends of the table. West Ham up to 37 points after one of their best performances of the season. They really did play superbly, especially in the second half. They're surely safe. Manchester United now stuck on 63 points after successive defeats, really missing out in the chase for the top four after Newcastle's defeat earlier. Benrahma's goal. West Ham 1, Manchester United 0.
Thanks, Jonathan. Other news as well early today. Arsenal beat Newcastle 2-0 at St James's Park to close the gap to a point of the Premier League leaders, Manchester City. Here is Perez.
My front right. Started to give up a bit.
So then, tyre degradation starting to play a factor here in this Grand Prix as the Mexican looks in his mirrors, and now he's got his teammate right up behind him.
3 seconds the gap. Verstappen 7/10 quicker on the last lap, and Perez reporting some degradation. It's not going well for him, and he's still not a mile away from Alonso. Alonso's 4 seconds back from Perez in 17 laps, and as he was slightly quicker on the last lap. Sainz is right there as well. This is certainly the closest an Aston Martin and a Ferrari have been on race pace compared to a Red Bull, but it's Perez. It's Verstappen in the other Red Bull is mighty quick still and is homing in on the race lead. Phenomenal stuff.
Taking pit stops in the last few moments. Gasly making the move to hards along with Magnussen, Bottas, Norris also been in way earlier. Piastri, De Vries, Sargent came in very early doors for a front wing change. They all find themselves now at the back of the pack. Christian.
While we were at the football, Lewis Hamilton passed Alex Albon for what is at the moment P9. We mentioned earlier that Lewis Hamilton was stuck behind the Williams of Alex Albon. That has been dispatched now. And just a word on Max Verstappen. As he flew past Carlos Sainz and Fernando Alonso, the two cars closest to Red Bull in terms of sheer pace, it reminded me of when you are playing Formula One on the PlayStation or Xbox and the difficulty's on too low. The speed gain from that Red Bull on the straight as it breezed past was ridiculous. More powerful than we've seen in recent years in Formula One. A ridiculous pace advantage on the straights for the Red Bull.
Charles Leclerc being told to box. The sound you're hearing is Lewis Hamilton down through the gears, right onto the back of the Haas now of Nico Hülkenberg as Hamilton's teammate Russell screeches his tyres after a pit stop. He makes his way out. Leclerc straight in as well. Nice clean stops for the both of them. 2.7 and 2.6 seconds apiece. Leclerc back on his way.
Hamilton and Hülkenberg side by side through the first corner, but Hülkenberg holds on for another lap ahead of Lewis Hamilton, whose frustrations will grow in this one so far. Up to 7th now because a lot of drivers have pitted, but he's just been boxed in behind a lot of slower runners. Albon's still going on his medium tyres. At least that's one move that Lewis has done as we jump back on board with him. Heading down towards turn 11 now. He's too far back from Hülkenberg to have a go at this one. It's another DRS zone, another big stamp on the brakes where Verstappen's been doing some moves, but I don't think Hamilton's going to have a chance as he reels in Hülkenberg. Nope, way too far back. And Hülkenberg will survive again.
The Haas team bringing upgrades to the floor this weekend, which seem to have proved quite fruitful for both Magnussen and Hülkenberg, finding increased pace. Magnussen already taking a pit stop. He was up in the top 7, now down to 14th. The battle for the podium ensues. Carlos Sainz under braking, getting oh so close to Fernando Alonso, but he peels off into the pit lane, so we don't see how that one will unfold. And has to have a huge lock-up to scrub the speed off and hit the pit limiter. Smoke everywhere. Those tyres, no use, but it's no problem. He switches them out.
Maximum attack from Sainz. He was all over the back of Alonso. I thought he was even going to have a look to the inside at the final corner. He was so close to the back of the Aston Martin, who's just drifted back from Verstappen, then screeched it into the pit lane, locked up fully. It's a brilliant stop from Ferrari, 2.2 seconds, and that could be worth an undercut chance here.
Nice lunge from Stroll further back in the pack to get himself up into 10th down the inside of Zhou Guanyu in the Alfa Romeo in turn 1. Sainz feeds out just in front of Alex Albon in 7th.
And that's crucial. He's ahead of Albon, Tsunoda, Stroll and Zhou. As you said, Stroll and Zhou battling it out and Stroll making a move. But he, like Hamilton, is making hard work of coming through the field at the moment. Sainz, crucially, with a 2.2 second stop, stayed ahead of all those guys, and that gives him a brilliant chance to pump in an outlap here and undercut Fernando Alonso.
Sergio Perez is still out in front, though, in the Red Bull on the medium tyre, starting to feel the effects of degradation. A little bit of graining on his front tyres. The gap between himself and teammate Max Verstappen, 1.6 seconds.
Now Sainz is right in behind Hamilton. So Hamilton hasn't pitted, Sainz has. And Sainz might get a little held up here. So will Alonso dive into the pits and cover off the Ferrari? Or will the horse have bolted already for now? No, it's bolted. Alonso has to stay out because he'll lose position if he were to pit now. Sainz was half a second quicker in the middle sector. And what Aston Martin will hope is that now Sainz will lose a load of time fighting with Hamilton and Hülkenberg. He's right in the melee now.
Through 18 and 19 we go on to the main straight. DRS wide open for the Ferrari of Carlos Sainz. Looks to the inside of Lewis Hamilton, down the inside through the gears, nice and smooth for the smooth operator, up past Hamilton into 6th. Hülkenberg's next.
Sainz has got to be clinical, and he was there. Hamilton thought about a bit of a defence, knows they're on different strategies, but still wanted to keep the Ferrari behind. But Sainz, he knows he cannot wait an extra corner there because he needs to pass Hülkenberg on this lap as well. And as they come through the long left-hander now, 6, 7 and 8, right in the curve on the right-hand side, he'll get the DRS on Hülkenberg down to turn 11. And another important move coming up for Carlos Sainz.
Let's see if this one pays off. Hamilton with the DRS open, but so does Sainz, courtesy of Nico Hülkenberg in the Haas into the braking zone. We go. No, cannot get by. Christian Hugill.
Let's remember, at this point of the race, we're in key safety car territory here. We know how close the walls are on this Miami circuit. The slightest mistake from a driver, you're in the wall, and that could bring the safety car out, and that would be a huge advantage at this point. Sergio Perez. He's coming into the pits. Sergio Perez getting ready to box. That would be a huge advantage at this point to anyone who hasn't pitted.
Perez is in. How smooth can this one be? Needs to be a quick stop from the Red Bull crew. All 4 tyres on and off in a split second. It's exactly 2.2. Nice and tidy, same as Sainz.
Yeah, matches the best pit stop of the race so far. So good pit stops across the board so far today. And Perez will emerge into some good clean air as well. Ahead of Carlos Sainz, who's going to have a lunge on Hülkenberg this time around in turn 1 and makes it through. Good move there from Sainz. It's not miles back from Perez. Is Carlos Sainz now sweeping through turn 3. Perez flashes into 4 and Sainz is just a couple of seconds back. It was almost a defensive move there from Red Bull to make sure that Sainz didn't undercut him.
Sainz's Ferrari right now is looking a little bit like a rocket ship. 3 seconds he's got the gap to Perez at, and of course Sergio Perez going to have colder tyres than Carlos Sainz will. Already warmed up, might be able to make use of that in this opening lap.
Yeah, Perez's first stint has just not been that impressive. Verstappen had whittled down the race lead to just 1.2 seconds when Perez pitted. So Red Bull either were trying to keep Sainz behind him, or they were just trying to avoid their 2 cars racing at the front of the field, or perfectly both. And it's worked out now. Verstappen leads on the hard tyre, hasn't pitted. Alonso stayed out as well on the mediums and is still lapping fairly quickly in second place. He now needs to go as long as he can because Sainz will definitely have undercut Alonso for a podium position. And that's the battle now. Perez emerged in 4th behind Esteban Ocon, who he's got to clear. Ocon hasn't pitted.
Now, when Carlos Sainz came into the pits, he screeched up his tyres. On the track at the moment, though, Lewis Hamilton just having a little look down the inside of Nico Hülkenberg under DRS. Still not enough to get by the German. Here's Verstappen.
Things are not that smooth.
Okay, understood.
No major deal there for Verstappen out front. Hamilton is stuck behind Hülkenberg. He's got to send in a move on the brakes. We've seen some nice passes this race so far. Stroll really, really close with the Williams of Alex Albon there. I thought they were going to tangle at turn 1. More good battling in the midfield, and they just about didn't. Albon stays ahead of Lance Stroll. Neither of them have pitted, and they're both in the top 10 for now. Hamilton is right under the rear wing of Hülkenberg into the braking zones. He just doesn't look like he's got the confidence to send any level of lunge like we've seen others do.
You're listening to Sergio Perez in the Red Bull as he breezes past Esteban Ocon into the left-hander, gets himself up into 3rd spot now, having just pitted. Speaking of pit stops, Carlos Sainz had one, super quick, but he came into the pits at a rapid rate of knots, had to slam on the brakes, the tyres going up in smoke before he hits the pit limiter to get into the pit lane. That is being investigated for speeding in the pit lane by race control. So Sainz going well on the track, off track in the pit lane, not so well. We'll see how that one plays out.
Well, normally if it's investigated, it means that you've done the crime, and Sainz was fully locked up as Hamilton has another nose to the inside but doesn't commit to the move on Hülkenberg. Lap after lap now he's sitting behind the Haas and losing time on the same strategy. He's going to have George Russell for company soon as well. Russell having pitted already in the other Mercedes. I think Sainz, yeah, he's got a 5-second penalty. It's a howler from Sainz. He was desperate to get the undercut on Alonso, wanted to maximise his pit entry, was all locked up coming into the pits, and he couldn't slow it down in time. 80 kph through the pit lane, and Sainz has done too much. 5-second penalty. His brilliance in this pit window phase has just completely come undone. Alonso back into the pound seat for the podium.
Let's see how that one plays out then for Carlos Sainz. Come the end of this race, Verstappen leads, 4 seconds the gap. Here's George Russell.
Check the front wing.
Will do.
Russell currently down in 10th spot, asking for the team to check his front wing. Clearly not too happy with it at the moment, as his teammate breezes past Nico Hülkenberg, finally up into 6th spot. This mid-pack of cars starting to unfold nicely now as Lance Stroll is doing battle still with George Russell, the Aston Martin, keeping ahead of the Mercedes.
Yeah, Russell with Gasly behind him as well. Those two traded places in the first stint. They were in the battle for 5th net, and they still are, but Russell needs to clear Lance Stroll, who hasn't pitted yet. This is the battle for 9th, but there are plenty of others ahead who haven't made a stop. Here we go on board with the Mercedes. Down to turn 17 in the slipstream. Stroll goes defensive, and Russell cannot make it through there. They're very, very close into the apex of the corner, and now Russell stamps on the throttle. Surely with the DRS will make a move into turn 1.
Down onto the main straight, Russell right up behind the Aston Martin, now alongside him and through as he heads into the braking zone. A round of applause from those in the grandstands. Russell gets Stroll the 9th place in this race.
Tell you he's having a stormer. Fernando Alonso is still out there on the medium tyres that he started the race in, and it was looking like he was being caught by Sainz. Sainz pitted from being right in behind him, got the speeding in the pit lane penalty, and Alonso has stayed out, was immediately undercut, stayed out, and now he's done his best lap of the race. He's only 3/10 per lap off Verstappen in the race lead. He's playing himself in pretty nicely here.
Christian?
Well, George Russell had been on the radio and said check the front wing. The Mercedes have come to George and said that's absolutely fine. But another problem for George Russell could be that the FIA are investigating Lance Stroll and George Russell for leaving the track and gaining an advantage. I don't think we saw that on the cameras, did we, Harry? But could that change that position with George Russell having just gone up to P9?
No, because it's just been cleared by the stewards as well.
Breaking news.
Thank you, Christian. Meanwhile, Fernando Alonso finally calls it quits on this set of tyres and comes into the pit lane for that change as Perez sets the fastest lap time, goes even faster, gets through. The gap between Sergio Perez and Max Verstappen at the moment is about 17 seconds. Bear in mind, Jolien, that the pit lane loss is around about 20 seconds all in all. But this is a bit of a worry then now for Sergio Perez, unless he can suddenly put in flying lap after flying lap.
Well, he is doing that now. 7/10 quicker than Verstappen on the last lap. New hard tyres for Perez. Old hard tyres for Verstappen.
But in a bit, you need to let me know what the limitation on the medium was, so we know what to do with the front wing.
Max, I'm looking at that on the pit wall. You focus on driving, please.
Verstappen trying to cover all bases now. He knows he's in a straight fight with his teammate for the win. Alonso is pitted on that lap. He's only come out 1.2 seconds back from Sainz, and Sainz has a 5-second penalty. So that's looking rosy for Alonso. I mean, his pace was extraordinary at the end of that stint. Really not too far away from the pace of the Red Bulls. As Gasly dives down the inside of Lance Stroll.
Nice move for 10th spots. Little bit of a kick on the steering wheel as he makes his way towards the tight left-hander of 14 into 15. Gasly up into 10th, Stroll down into 11th. Nice move from the Frenchman.
Yeah, with the DRS, fresh tyres, and Stroll now suffering on those tyres that he started on. And he defended a lot harder from Russell than he did from Gasly, who's just behind him. Those two still looking like having decent point finishes so far today as we get towards the halfway point. And that's important because Verstappen has to go to the medium tyres. Fernando Alonso has just shown a brilliant stint on those medium tyres as well. Others were struggling a little bit more earlier on, but Alonso had a second lease of life when Sainz had pitted there, kept the mediums alive, and that is what Verstappen will have to go on to. He will, if he pits now, he will emerge behind Perez. Unless there's a safety car, he will emerge behind Perez, but he'll be on a faster, softer tyre to go and attack his teammate for the win. It's set up really, really nicely.
So far, on lap 26 of 57 here in the Miami Grand Prix, it's been fairly clean. Here's Stroll.
Give me an update on what's happening in the race, man. Like, how's our pace? What's it looking like? What do I have to do?
Pace is good relative to the hard runners that are still out, so we just need to keep pushing on the tyres now. Your pace is good.
Stroll wants an update, I'll give him one, but his teammate, first of all, was right up behind Carlos Sainz. The sound you're hearing is Fernando Alonso coming into 14, left, right, straight into the braking zone. DRS move on the back straight, Jolien.
Got to be done. I'm amazed how quickly he's reeled in Sainz as well. Sainz pitted a handful of laps earlier than Fernando Alonso. He's got a 5-second penalty, so Alonso doesn't have to pass him on track, but he's got the DRS now heading down towards the final corner. And as a little look to the inside, just troubling the mirrors of Sainz, but not trying to make the move at that corner.
Well, Lance Stroll wanted an update. I'll give him one. Verstappen leads from Sergio Perez. Verstappen yet to pit. Perez has. Ocon third. Sainz. Alonso the top 5, but Alonso trying it into turn 1. No such luck. Can he get the undercut? No, he's not close enough. Alonso 5th. Then it's Hamilton, Hülkenberg, Russell, Tsunoda and Gasly the top 10. Stroll, Magnussen, Zhou Guanyu, Charles Leclerc, Valtteri Bottas the top 15. Norris, Albon, Piastri, Nick De Vries and Logan Sargent currently round out the 20 drivers, all still in this race. The sound you're hearing is George Russell down the inside of Yuki Tsunoda in the AlphaTauri. That was the move for 8th position. Elsewhere in sport today in the Premier League, Arsenal beat Newcastle 2-0 at St James's Park to close the gap to a point of the leaders Manchester City. And on track here, more moves being done. Carlos Sainz makes it look fairly easy for Fernando Alonso, who finally gets through and up into 4th spot.
Look, he basically led him through. Sainz there, look, he almost backed off the throttle.
Does he know he's got the penalty? We don't know if he does know.
Well, either way, you don't let him through. I know Sainz looks up to Alonso, their compatriots. Alonso, the elder statesman, the young Spaniard Carlos Sainz is not so young anymore. He's been around and he's got himself into a top car.
For me, this pushing too much is not good for the tyres. I don't agree with this.
Okay, Albon disagreeing with the pit wall. The Williams is 17th, and that's not going to be a big change for anyone down there. Obviously, the pit wall there at Williams thinking you can push the hards hard, and Albon thinking he's got to nurse them a little bit more. But yeah, Sainz, baffling one, just didn't have any defence, and Alonso finally came through. So Alonso is up into a net 3rd. They're both actually 4th and 5th because Ocon still hasn't pitted in the Alpine. There's only a pretty nice stint out there.
Sainz still keeping hold of him. You're listening to the sounds of George Russell, who has just made a move on Yuki Tsunoda and now is staring at the rear wing of Nico Hülkenberg's Haas. Christian.
until the last lap, Max Verstappen's lap times were about 3 or 4 tenths a lap slower than his teammate Sergio Perez. I've been keeping an eye on the live timing. Of course, Max Verstappen started on the hard tyre. Sergio Perez started on the medium tyre and has switched to the hard. What this means, with the gap between them at around 16 seconds, you need 20 for a pit stop. It means that when Max Verstappen does pit, he's going to need to push hard to catch his teammate.
Well, he will, certainly. Russell makes the move on Hulkenberg.
31.8.
Just to give you a little bit of wider context here, if you're just joining us on BBC Radio 5 Live, it's lap 29 of the Miami Grand Prix. Max Verstappen leads this race for Red Bull. He started down in 9th and has clinically carved his way through the field. His teammate Sergio Perez started on pole. Perez currently in 2nd, but the Mexican has made a pit stop. Verstappen has not. The gap, though, Jolyon Palmer, former Renault Formula 1 driver alongside me, is just over 16 seconds. Average pit lane loss is between 17 and 20.
So as it stands, Verstappen will emerge behind Perez when he makes the stop, but not by much, and he's now matching Perez's lap times. A couple of tenths on the last lap. Perez was quicker, but he's not making big inroads on tyres that are about 20 laps fresher. So Verstappen's still looking good, but as it stands, he's got to make the move on his teammate and championship rival on the track.
Fernando Alonso is the sound you're hearing. Here's Verstappen, though.
So you are 2 tenths quicker than Checo in sector 2. It's all turns 4, 5 and 6. He's pushing the tyre. It is getting gusty out there, Max, so just take care in that section.
Alonso sweeps by Esteban Ocon as Max Verstappen gets some feedback on where he's quicker than his teammate from his Engineer GP. 15.8 seconds the gap now up in front. Alonso in 3rd, Ocon 4th, Sainz in 5th, and they're all pretty close to each other. Sainz not letting Alonso escape too much, but he now has to dispatch the Frenchman of Esteban Ocon, who has yet to pit.
Sainz is only 5.9 seconds ahead of George Russell in this one as well. That Sainz's battle now is going to be rear guard with that 5-second penalty speeding in the pit lane. Real clanger there for Sainz as he looked to maximise everything, and as they flash through, Alonso, Ocon, who hasn't pitted, and then Sainz. Real shame that Sainz gave up what was a decent strategy and decent pace for Ferrari in this one. The other Ferrari, Charles Leclerc, is still running in the Grand Prix. He's still behind Kevin Magnussen, who was behind earlier on. Magnussen pitted early, Leclerc stayed out, and now they meet again. 12th for Magnussen, 13th for Leclerc. Still in contention of decent points out there, the two of them. And Leclerc's having a miserable weekend.
Yeah, Kevin Magnussen in the Haas started 4th, which, depending on how you look at statistics, is the best ever start for a Haas car, if you exclude the sprint pole from Brazil last year for Kevin Magnussen. Fell down the field quite early on, but stabilised at around about 7th. Charles Leclerc managed to get in front of him, but Magnussen fought right back and regained the position and kept it, and they are still doing battle. You're listening to the other Ferrari of Carlos Sainz, who makes a fairly easy move down the inside at the end of the straight, through on Esteban Ocon up into 4th spot for the Spaniard.
Personal best lap of the race for Lewis Hamilton in 6th position, lapping at a similar pace to those around.
You are free to lean on the tyres more now, Max. Just watching our track position on Fernando.
So Hamilton lapping at a similar pace to Sainz, Ocon and Alonso, but he's still got to make a pit stop from 6th. That will elevate Russell to 6th, which will be 5th when Ocon pits. And that's an ominous radio message to Verstappen. You're free to push now, as if he hasn't been in this stint so far. That's been pretty decent. He actually just dropped nearly a second in the final sector on the last lap, though. So Perez ate a full second into his lead. Under 15 seconds now, the gap. So as soon as Verstappen tried to push, he's made a mistake at turn 17, the final tight left-hander, and actually this cost him more than he's been trying to gain.
As they speed through turn 4, Ocon, the left-hander in the Alpine, trying to keep tabs on Carlos Sainz, who is just escaping out the road. He's still within DRS zone, but Sainz certainly having the better pace compared to Ocon, who is also still yet to pit. Hulkenberg up there as well, Tsunoda in the AlphaTauri going long on this first set of tyres. Once they come in, we'll expect the pack to shuffle around a bit. that gap at the front is not coming down very quickly. It's incrementally coming down. Sergio Perez still has the fastest lap, but it's about 15 seconds at the moment, and it's going to be tight, a bit too tight if you're Checo.
Yeah, personal best of the Grand Prix for Verstappen, 32 laps into his set of hard tyres. So that shows the degradation on this set is minimal. He's been looking after them a little bit. He's been released to go and push now, and he's managed to find a bit of time.
Exactly, so we have George 1.1 behind, so we aren't racing him, we're racing Ocon. So let's not hold each other up.
Bit of team play then going on for Lewis Hamilton and the Mercedes side of the garage.
Verstappen half a second quicker than Perez on the last lap. This time it was Perez's time to make a mistake in the middle sector. Lost 8 tenths compared to himself there. So both Red Bull drivers making little mistakes. They're tit for tat on the last couple of laps. And now it's 15.5 seconds, the lead that Verstappen has. Verstappen has to pit. He'll go onto the medium tyres, race it to the end. And I just think he's going to have such a pace advantage to go and attack Perez. Perez has not done enough in this Grand Prix yet.
No, he hasn't. We're still waiting to see how it will unfold over the course of the next few laps.
I'm backing up though.
Hamilton, fairly welcoming of George Russell to pass him if he can make the move himself. He's not going to back off though to make it happen as Hamilton speeds through down the straight. It's a big weekend of sport on 5 Live. We mentioned Arsenal beating Newcastle 2-0 in the Premier League. Meanwhile, West Ham beat Manchester United 1-0 at the London Stadium to move 7 points clear of the relegation zone. In Scotland, Celtic have been crowned Premiership champions, winning 2-0 at Hearts, while Liverpool beat Manchester City 2-1 in the WSL to all but end City's title hopes. Meanwhile,
thank you very much appreciated.
Meanwhile, as George Russell says thank you, Manchester United maintained their push for the Women's Super League title with a 3-0 victory over Tottenham, although Chelsea beat Everton 7-0. You're listening to live coverage of the Miami Grand Prix on BBC Radio 5 Live. It's lap 33 of 57. Max Verstappen, Jolyon Palmer still leading the gap, maintaining it around 15.5 seconds.
Fastest lap for Verstappen on the last tour. 1 tenth quicker than Perez, who does a personal best. Verstappen on much older tyres is still the quicker Red Bull. Russell very, very polite there on the radio. Thank you very much appreciated. As he came past Lewis Hamilton then. Hamilton jumping out of the way actually pretty early there from Lewis at turn 12. Now he'll try and stick with George Russell, stay in the DRS zone and help himself get closer to Esteban Ocon.
Effective track position is around 5 seconds behind Checo. Obviously, the longer we can extend this, the better.
A huge gaggle of cars in the mid-pack were stuck behind Nico Hulkenberg, but the Haas driver has made a mistake, and that's allowed Yuki Tsunoda to go through into the DRS zone. He's now going to be under threat from Pierre Gasly and Lance Stroll. Stroll in the Aston Martin trying to make the move down the inside. He's not close enough to Hulkenberg. He goes side by side with Pierre Gasly. Gasly shoves him out wide, and that brings Kevin Magnussen in the second Haas into play. And behind all of them is the Ferrari of Charles Leclerc, who's actually a little bit detached.
Sort of forgot he was in this one. Leclerc behind the 2 Haas cars, behind Lance Stroll, who's yet to pit. And yeah, Hulkenberg making a bit of a mistake there down at turn 6, ran wide at the corner where Leclerc put it in the wall at the end of yesterday's qualifying, and that allowed Tsunoda to go through, and now he's got a load more cars right in behind him. Gasly, who put a good move on Lance Stroll there, will get a tight exit out of the final corner, will stamp on the throttle, and he won't need to pass Hulkenberg because Nico Hulkenberg pits from 9th position.
Yep, so everyone slots up a position. Tsunoda went through in 8th, Gasly now 9th, Stroll 10th, Magnussen 11th, Leclerc up into 12th as Nico Hulkenberg comes into the pits. Christian.
If you were listening closely 5 or 6 laps ago, you'd have heard Max Verstappen's race engineer saying the wind's getting up. Now, normally that wouldn't seem too significant. However, this weekend, the wind has been a factor on the slippery relayed surface here at the Miami Autodrome. It has been tricky for the drivers to keep hold of it when the wind gets up. Now, every evening in Miami so far, as we've moved from late afternoon into evening, the wind has risen. And that is exactly what's happening now. So we'll keep an eye, because if the wind gets heavier, as the tyres get more worn, it'll become more tricky for the drivers to keep it on the track, and we know how close the walls are, so who knows, the chances of late safety cars quite possible.
Well, so far I've been quite impressed by how tidy it's been in these opening 35 laps of 57. Charles Leclerc making his way around further back in the pack. Meanwhile, his teammate, the sound you're hearing, Carlos Sainz, just made a move on the Alpine of Esteban Ocon. Well, that was a little earlier on, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was just now. Sainz passing Ocon for fourth place. Ocon still hasn't pitted on the hard tyre that he started the race with, and he's in that battle with Hamilton, and those guys are going to pit late. They're on the Verstappen strategy here. They'll pit late and try and charge to the back of the Leclerc, Magnussen, Gasly gaggle and see what sort of points they can muster up at the end of this one. I mean, we should have some decent fighting for the points and for the win here.
There has been some good close fighting so far, I think it's fair to say, in this mid-pack, and the likes of Ocon, Tsunoda up in 8th as well, who's gone really long. As you say, either going to come in and make a charge, or hoping luck swings their way with either some sort of yellow safety car situation, which allows them a free or cheap pit stop.
Thank goodness we've not extended the DRS zones for this weekend. Drivers were talking nonsense before the weekend. Bit boring in Baku. It's been great racing action here. Overtakes are plenty. A lot of them have had to be done on the brakes. We've seen some good ones from Verstappen, from Russell. A nice move there from Pierre Gasly. It's been a good exhibition of racecraft so far through 36 laps. And hopefully we've got the best yet to come. The two Red Bulls will have to fight this one out on track. Although Verstappen pumps in another fastest lap of the race. Perez does a personal best. It's another 10th to Verstappen. He's nudging the gap out, which will mean he's got a little bit less to do when he takes his pit stop.
Yeah, it's ominous. It's impressive from Max Verstappen. Still yet to pit. 15.9 seconds the gap now up front. Then Alonso is another 15.5 seconds off the second Red Bull of Checo Perez. Then comes a tasty battle for fourth. Carlos Sainz, Esteban Ocon and George Russell, who makes the move down the inside of the Frenchman. The black Mercedes making its way past the blue and pink Alpine for fifth spot down into turn one.
Yep, decent move there for Russell. Ocon struggling a little bit on his used tyres. So Russell straight through on the inside. That one a little bit less dramatic than other moves that we've seen. Here's the sound of Kevin Magnussen having a fine race so far, down in 11th, but will be in the points once others are pitted. And he had a little cut through the turn 14, 15 fiddly chicane, but no major harm done there for Magnussen. He is still ahead of Charles Leclerc in this race. Swapped places a couple of times early on. Fast forward 35 laps, Magnussen still ahead of Leclerc on the same strategy.
Leclerc will be miserable if he keeps seeing the rear end of that Haas for the rest of this Grand Prix. Magnussen's teammate Hülkenberg came out of the pits on the medium tyre, down in 16th. He's behind Lando Norris. Magnussen keeping Leclerc at bay. He closed up on him though.
Ferrari are not having a good race right now on the hard tyres. Sainz is dropping away quite quickly from Alonso. 4 tenths on the last lap. He was slower than Alonso. He's just done his personal best. And he's been reeled in by George Russell by half a second on the last lap. And now Russell is within 5 seconds of Sainz, where Sainz has the penalty.
Here comes Charles Leclerc. DRS slam shut in the braking zone at the end of the back straight into the left-hander. Gets the move done finally on Kevin Magnussen, but can the Dane fight back? We make our way around the final corner. Now it's Magnussen with the DRS. He's shuffled to the inside, late on the brakes for the Haas driver, down through the gears. Can he get it stopped in time? Yes, he can. Through the right-hander, into the left and right S's. Leclerc cannot get by Kevin Magnussen. Fantastic.
That's a hat-trick. That's a hat-trick of pass and repass from Magnussen on Leclerc. Oh, what will be going through Charles Leclerc's head right now? He made it pretty easy in the end. He made a bit of a hash at the first corner, trying to get a switch back as well. But Magnussen retakes the place. Here's George Russell now on Sainz, laid on the brakes into turn 11. Bit of a lunge, and it's a brilliant lunge from Russell. Takes fourth on the track outright. Sainz struggling. Russell flying right now in the Mercedes. Was really, really struggling yesterday. Both Mercedes were well out of position on the grid for Hamilton. As we cut back to Leclerc side by side with Magnussen again.
You're listening to Charles Leclerc aggressively clouting the curves. The left-hander of 14, the right-hander of 15, and now we approach the long back straight. It's a bit of a DRS who's who between these two. Now Leclerc will have it right onto the back of Kevin Magnussen. The Rear wing flap flies open. He starts to close in on the back of the Haas. Has a little look to the inside, but no, bides his time. Is he going to do it on the main straight instead? As he learned from last time around, he gets a good exit around the final corner, right onto the back of Kevin Magnussen. The sparks fly from the rear of that Haas. Leclerc has the inside line, DRS open, slam shut under braking into turn one. Leclerc through on Magnussen, and this time it seems like it's going to stay that way, at least for a couple more corners.
About time for Leclerc, about time. Magnussen has been superb with his racecraft so far in this one, but finally had nothing to do to come back to Leclerc. Leclerc learned from the one before, got the DRS at the final chance around the lap, which means Magnussen now cannot pounce to come immediately back. Hamilton's pitted, meanwhile, from 7th place in the Mercedes.
Yeah, Hamilton had a bit of a moment earlier on in the lap, so tyres not going well for him. Leclerc down through the gears, that's the sound you're hearing, making the move stick on Kevin Magnussen. But then Magnussen came back in the initial fight, once again on the Monegasque. Leclerc this time making it well known that Ferrari is going to get past the Haas.
It's been fun though. The unexpected battle of this Grand Prix so far, Magnussen v Leclerc, and Magnussen's still with Charles Leclerc. He had DRS down towards turn 11, but surely Leclerc will now stretch away.
So we rolled.
Russell was happy with that one.
Little sing-song. Almost breaking fully into verse there for George. Ran out of lyrics, but he's having a good race. 4th place, personal best lap of the race, 9/10 quicker than Sainz on the last lap, who is going backwards quite quickly now, Carlos Sainz.
Out front though, it's Max Verstappen who leads this race. He has yet to pit. His teammate Sergio Perez started on pole. He has pitted, but the gap that Verstappen has been able to create is near on about 17 seconds. So if Verstappen came into the pits, it's around about a total time 20-second loss once you come in and get back out on track again. He's going to be right on the rear end of his teammate on fresher tyres. This has not gone Checo's way so far on lap 40 of 57.
No, this has been an absolute power move from Verstappen. He's stayed out on the same tyres that he started with, and now he's still lapping quicker than Perez. He was 9/10 quicker on the last lap. The gap is over 17 seconds now. Verstappen might not need to overtake him on track after all. 17 laps to go, and the way that Perez is dropping back 3/10 more on the last lap. You know what? Verstappen's going to come out so close with Perez, he'll make mincemeat of him when he's on some medium tyres getting some DRS. He's driven in another league to Perez this weekend, apart from the one moment in Q3. That's given Perez a chance today, and Sergio Perez has not taken it at all.
You're listening to Lewis Hamilton on the back of his old teammate Valtteri Bottas.
No need to kill the tyres. The overtake on Valtteri will help.
Bit of advice from his engineer Bono, down into the final corner, makes the switch back Hamilton into the inside. That becomes the outside round the final corner, gets the move with DRS through on Bottas, but it's Bottas and the Alfa Romeo going to try and fight back. He has a little nose through to turn one, but the writing's on the wall. Hamilton in front. Ocon comes out of the pits just in front of Valtteri Bottas and behind Lewis Hamilton.
So that's an undercut from Hamilton on Ocon. That's been brewing for quite a long time. Hamilton was about a couple of seconds back from Ocon, pitted a lap earlier, Alpine pitted, and that will be frustrating for Esteban Ocon, emerging behind Lewis Hamilton, who had to put the move on Bottas and did it neatly, just using the grip of fresh medium tyres, accelerated well out of the tight left-hander at turn 17, made it through, had DRS as a bonus for a bit of lap time, and he's suddenly looking like he can get a decent result out of this one.
It's starting to switch around in these in the later stages of this Miami Grand Prix. Max Verstappen still leads this race. He has yet to pit. Sergio Perez, who started on pole, is in 2nd place. Fernando Alonso currently rounds out the podium, placing positions in 3rd. Russell 4th, Sainz 5th, with a time penalty for speeding in the pit lane to be added, 5 seconds. Then it's Ocon, Gasly, Stroll, still yet to pit, got himself up into 8th for the time being. Leclerc, Magnussen now occupying the 9th place. Hamilton now into the top 10.
And Hamilton now was up behind Kevin Magnussen. Magnussen, for all his racing heroics, would have been slowing himself and Leclerc down a little bit. And there's 5 seconds between the two at the moment, but Hamilton on fresher tyres will race up to the back of the Haas ahead. And he'll be eyeing some decent points in this one, will Lewis. Still, Lance Stroll has to pit from the top 10. It's only he and Verstappen in the race lead that have to pit in the whole Grand Prix now. Everyone else has stopped, so we're getting a clear picture of where things are at. Stroll will pit and tumble right down the order. He's not really had a very good day so far. Verstappen is going to pit, and at this rate, he's going to come out ahead of Perez. Does another really quick lap. I was about to say fastest lap, but Hulkenberg has taken fastest lap in the race.
I was going to say,
down in
from
15.
nowhere.
Yeah, Nico Hulkenberg pitted and pumped one in, so he currently holds the fastest lap of the race. But Verstappen did his personal best lap of the race. He's half a second a lap quicker than Perez. It's huge, the gulf between the two here. This will be humbling for Perez.
It certainly will be. King of the streets, but perhaps not quite the Miami Grand Prix streets. Christian. Lap 42 of 57 here in Miami as we race around the Hard Rock Stadium that houses the Miami Dolphins, the NFL team. Verstappen leads Perez, 18 seconds the gap now. The sound you're hearing is Lewis Hamilton makes his way around the final corner, across the start-finish line, down through the gears, into the right-hander for the 7-time champion, chasing down Kevin Magnussen for 9th. Christian. Well, hang on, Christian, it's Verstappen first.
Effective track position now, minus 1.7. Minus 1.7.
It's a rather ominous drive so far from Verstappen. Christian.
That's exactly the point I was about to raise. So Max Verstappen's last lap at 1:31.004, his personal fastest lap of the race. Sergio Perez was half a second slower. It means the gap between them is 18.2 seconds with only 15 laps to go, and he needs about 20 seconds to be able to come out in front of Sergio Perez. Unfortunately, this picture is becoming clearer and clearer. Max Verstappen is going to stay out until he can afford a 20-second odd gap, and won't even need to pass Sergio Perez on the circuit, which, let's be honest, is a bit of a shame for those wanting to see a fight on track.
I mean, the thing is, the fight on the track could be pretty unentertaining with the pace difference they've got. It would be like Verstappen coming past an AlphaTauri in this one. They've had such a difference, and by the time he puts on some new medium tyres, and Perez is still going round on a hard tyre that is slower than Fernando Alonso for the last handful of laps. Alonso's 14.5 seconds back from Perez on lap 43 and 57. Pitted later. He's got as much chance of catching Perez as Perez does of beating Verstappen in this one.
Just give us some tyre feedback.
Yeah, about right. Be better, be worse.
George Russell. Yeah, it's all right. As Lance Stroll in the Aston Martin comes in finally for his pit stop, and he tumbles down the order. Is he going to get out in front of the McLaren of Lando Norris, who just comes through turn one? Miserable race so far for the two McLaren drivers. Norris down in 16th. Stroll came out ahead of him in 15th. Zhou Guanyu is 17th. Nick De Vries 18th. Piastri is 19th, and Logan Sargent, the race from hell really for him. Early doors, started at the back of the pack and had to change his front wing. Clearly picked up a little bit of damage and has been in 20th spot ever since. So not the homecoming that Sargent would have wanted.
20 cars still running. Street circuit.
I did not expect that, if I'm totally honest.
No way. Chance of the safety car, I thought, around here is pretty high. We've only had one race, and and we just had a ridiculous graphic come up on our screen calling Roger Federer.
It was James Marsden, the actor, and they called him Roger Federer. But two very different.
Someone's getting sacked in the
careers.
morning. Someone's getting sacked in the morning for that. Blimey. But yeah, street circuit. Walls close. Plenty of action through the weekend, and 20 cars still running.
Gap extended slightly at the front for Max Verstappen, 18.3 seconds. Verstappen leads, Perez, Alonso, Russell, Sainz the top 5, Gasly, Leclerc, Magnussen, Hamilton, Ocon the top 10, Bottas is 11th, Albon, Tsunoda, Hulkenberg with the fastest lap is in 14th, Stroll just behind him, or a few seconds back, Norris, Zhou Guanyu, De Vries, Piastri and Sargent, as we've been saying, all 20 runners still in this race. It was a really mixed up grid. Verstappen down in 9th, we had the likes of Hamilton, who you can hear now, down in 13th spot. It was Sergio Perez and pole, Kevin Magnussen was up in 4th, and it was a fairly clean start from everybody. But Verstappen has been clinical in his overtaking. Sainz was looking really fast early doors, but that's been put to the side for the time being, plus a 5-second time penalty for speeding in the pit lane. He's currently in 5th. He'll keep that 5th place if it ends like this, 9.5 seconds in front of Pierre Gasly for the time being.
Well, Perez might have a little bit of life left in him just yet. Fastest lap of the race for Sergio Perez on that last lap. Just a 10th quicker than Verstappen out front. Just 4 thousandths quicker than Hulkenberg's previous benchmark, but it shows he's got something left in the tyres, and he's got to just stay within 20 seconds of Verstappen. If he can do that, there'll be a race on, wheel to wheel at the end. Like I said, surely Verstappen will make it look so easy on a new medium tyre. But at least Perez will give himself the chance to try and defend. Possibly, just possibly.
Down into turn 1, Kevin Magnussen in the Haas, slings it into the left-hander, followed by the right-hand sweeping curve. Lewis Hamilton has been closing in on him in the Mercedes at a rapid rate. The gap now just under a second. It's teetering around the 1 second mark as Max Verstappen, with 18.5 second gap to second place man Sergio Perez, finally comes into the pits. How quick is this stop going to be? We've seen some excellent pit stops so far from multiple teams. It's looking neat and tidy so far for the reigning champion, and out he goes. It's not the quickest we've seen though, 3.1 seconds, and he's back out into the fast lane on the pits.
It's safe from Red Bull, but it's not rapid. Perez will come through. He comes into the right-hander at turn 1. Cheer from the crowd as the 2 Red Bulls now emerge, but Perez is going to have Verstappen straight into his mirrors and just outside of DRS range. In fact, if that pit stop was a second quicker, they'd have been side by side into turn 4, but because it was not Red Bull's best of the day, they are not split by a hair this lap. That is coming.
Right then, it's lap 46 of 57 of the Miami Grand Prix. Max Verstappen has just come into the pit lane on a fresh set of medium tyres. 1.5 seconds is the gap to his teammate Sergio Perez, who has been outrunning hard tyres for quite some time now. I hate to say it, writing on the wall slightly for Sergio Perez, as you can hear the screams from the crowd, the Mexican flags out in force, willing Checo Perez on, trying to make it back-to-back wins for the first time ever in his Formula One career, but Verstappen is hounding him.
Well, at least this might be a bit of fun. 2 Red Bulls line astern. Coming down towards turn 17, Verstappen has just inched his way to within 1 second of Sergio Perez. So, as they come out of this corner, he'll get a chance to open the DRS for the first time. I cannot fathom how Perez will keep Verstappen behind for 11 laps here, as Hamilton comes past Kevin Magnussen into 8th place. The 2 Red Bulls, Perez has got to be, I mean, they call him the Mexican Minister of Defense for some of his heroics in the past, but this would be a new level if he can hold on in the Grand Prix here.
Just over 10 laps to go. He'll be having to do some incredible defending. The gap now 0.6 of a second and closing. You're listening to Max Verstappen's Red Bull. Nice and smooth, the steering wheel in this opening sector, the long S's, making his way steadily up to the back of his Red Bull teammate. 6 points the gap at the top of the standings at the moment between Verstappen and Perez. Verstappen, though, closes right in onto the back of Checo Perez. Can't make the move there, but he is lining this one up nicely for a move by the end of this lap, that's for certain. Through the left-hander of 14, into the right-hander of 15. It's going to be in the DRS zone. Surely, round we go into the left-hander, onto that long back straight, 1.28 kilometres. The DRS line will come for Max Verstappen. How quickly can he close up to the back of Sergio Perez, who started on pole? Is this where Perez loses out here to Verstappen? Perez moves to the inside line to defend, forces Verstappen a little bit into the wall. They play nicely, coming now through the final corner. Another DRS zone onto the main straight. Perez straight to the inside and covers that off, but Verstappen is going to swoop round the outside. The crowd cheer. Can Perez hold on? No, he can't. With 10 laps to go, it is Max Verstappen, the reigning champion, in the lead of the Miami Grand Prix.
I tell you what, it's a nice bit of racing from the two. To be fair to Perez, he gave it a go, defended the inside at 17, defended the inside pretty hard there at turn 1. Verstappen had half a car ahead of him as he hit the brakes from the outside, the racing line. Perez then dived down to the inside. For a minute, I thought they were going to have a collision there on the apex as Perez steamed down the inside, but he was under control, and Verstappen just had so much grip at his disposal that he was able to stay around the outside of Perez and keep the lead. But on this lap, Perez is still within DRS and has a little chink to the inside of Verstappen down towards turn 11. Verstappen's not running away just yet.
Yeah, it was fairly nice racing, but straight away as they came onto the main straight, Perez knew he was coming, moved straight to the inside. Verstappen round the outside of turn 1.
He just had so much grip to play with that he could open the steering when he saw Perez coming in. I mean, Perez nearly doing his best George Russell impression from Baku there, coming in a little bit deep, going slightly wide of the apex, but Verstappen opening the steering and staying side by side with his teammate through the apex, gave him the inside in towards turn 2, and the move is done, and the race could be done. Fastest lap for Verstappen, 1.5 seconds in the lead.
Quick, clinical moves for the Dutchman. Started this race in 9th. Has led really for the majority of it. Came into the pits super late. Put on a fresh set of mediums and only had his teammate to re-overtake, and he did it in style up into the lead on lap 49. Christian.
They don't waste any time in Formula 1, and it's been quite funny watching this battle from the back of the Red Bull garage, because Mercedes down the road and Red Bull were all packing up, but then when that battle was happening, everybody stopped, and for the lap after, everybody stopped to keep an eye on what was going on with Perez and Verstappen. But then, now, business as usual, the move's been settled and everyone's gone back to packing away. I think that says everything we need to know, don't you?
Oh, that's a shame, isn't it? But there's still some great racing going on further back in the pack. It may not be over points, but it's Albon currently defending heavily from Lance Stroll down into the right-hander. It's going to be Stroll on the outside. That's the sound you're hearing. Makes the move through on Alex Albon, who now comes a cropper because Nico Hülkenberg is right up behind him. Hülkenberg did have the fastest lap. It's now gone back to Max Verstappen, as you might expect. Hülkenberg can't quite find a way through, but a nice move there from Lance Stroll up into 13th. His next target will be Yuki Tsunoda in 12th in the AlphaTauri.
Stroll round the outside of Albon, and yeah, it was a decent move from Stroll. I tell you, Albon really sent that even deeper and later and more locked up than Perez did, trying to keep his Red Bull teammate behind. Albon really smoked it in and has really hurt those tyres that he's got to carry to the end of the race there for Alex Albon, so it's probably not looking like points for him. The state of play is Red Bull 1-2, Verstappen from Perez. I don't see how that'll change now unless we have a safety car to the end of the race. Alonso is looking safe in 3rd. He's driven a superb Grand Prix. He's had good pace in the Aston Martin from the front row start. Russell is now looking safe in 4th. Sainz is 5th with a 5-second penalty, but with that 5-second penalty, he's looking safe because he's got 12 seconds back to Gasly.
Which position is Lance? Great move into 1.
That's P13, P13.
I mean, this guy is a joker, isn't he? That's Alonso just showing to the world that he's been watching the telly as he's been having his great drive in 3rd place. He's been watching Stroll make that move around the outside of Albon as as we managed to call it. But
let's mic him up. Get a bit of commentary from Alonso while he's racing around there. He's 16 seconds off the back of Perez. He's got about 7.5 to Russell.
He's mic'd up and we get it. It's golden from Fernando Alonso usually. He's having a pretty lonely race out there, and he's watching the big screens that are out there for the fans in the grandstands, and he's enjoying what he's seeing his teammate.
With my hands in the running, just managing in sector 1.
That feels, that was Sergio Perez just asking if Max Verstappen was struggling. The gap's 1.9 seconds. I don't know if that was a little bit of a hopeful question from Perez there.
Well, because Verstappen's actually not disappearing up the road. He's 1.8 seconds ahead of Perez, so just keeping Sergio at arm's length at the moment. The two Red Bulls still together, and you never know if Verstappen somehow destroys these mediums. Maybe Perez can come back on a very durable hard, but it seems a long shot.
You're listening to the sound of Yuki Tsunoda, who's looking fierce in the AlphaTauri on the back straight, getting right up into the rear, and now side on with Valtteri Bottas. Can he make it round the outside into the left-hander? He's a little bit of a lock-up, makes it stick now, coming through the final corner. Nice move from Yuki Tsunoda, up into 11th, and the sparks flying. Bottas is going to try and come back at him on the main straight. DRS open for the Alfa Romeo. Can't do it. Tsunoda holds 11th.
And Stroll now just behind, so Aston Martin can let Fernando know what's going on. He's in the battle for 11th place now. Tsunoda past Bottas. Tsunoda's top later. He's on fresher tyres, as is Stroll. And Bottas, who was very, very fast yesterday, struggling a little bit more today and dropping back. State of play is, battle for 6th is still on. Gasly has Leclerc behind him and Hamilton fast approaching. That'll be a 3-car train shortly, and Hamilton has by far the freshest tyres of those 3. And then we've maybe got a battle for the final point.
Let's head down to Christian then.
I've got my calculator out for a live championship update. So as things stand, Max Verstappen will take 25 points for the win, plus 1 for fastest lap. He will have 119 points to Sergio Perez's 105. It means the 6-point gap at the top of the championship will go to 14 points. So still far from all over in the World Championship fight, even with this dominant performance from Max Verstappen.
That is true, and we are only at round 5 of the Formula 1 World Championship. So, Jolene, anything can still happen. It's a long season. It's the longest ever in Formula 1.
Yeah, this is where we start grasping for some straws, isn't it? And seeing it. This is a flex from Max Verstappen in this Grand Prix. 2.5 seconds now clear of Perez. He's just managing the tyres there. Doesn't want to chew them up. Doesn't need to take any unnecessary risks on a gusty day. And I think he's got this one under control. And the manner of this victory, provided he takes it in 5 laps time, is going to be a sucker punch against Perez. From pole compared to 9th on the grid, and Verstappen has looked like he's in a different car.
This time last year, Valtteri Bottas in the Alfa Romeo was running in the top 5, ended up with a top 8 finish, but has just been taken by Lance Stroll over 12th spot. So despite getting into Q3 and having a 10th place starting position on the grid for Bottas, with 5 laps to go, he has lost out to Stroll, now down in 13th. 5 laps to go. I'm wondering if Yuki Tsunoda can reel in 4 seconds within that and try and get onto the back of Kevin Magnussen to make it 3 10th place finishes in a row. Bit of a tall order, but Tsunoda's going quite quickly out there at the moment.
He's got a chance, and he might take Stroll with him, so that's a potential battle before the end. The other one is the man that you can hear now, Charles Leclerc, within DRS range of Pierre Gasly. Gasly's 6th, and he's been very quiet in this Grand Prix, but ticking along nicely. He's got Leclerc right in behind him as they hit the apex of the final corner. Leclerc gets on the throttle, will get DRS again, and he might fancy a move here, Harry.
Round the final corner we go, onto the main straight. DRS open then for Leclerc. Gasly in the Alpine moves to the inside, but he locks his front right. Gasly goes deep. Leclerc sweeps round the outside. Leclerc through on Gasly for 6th.
Yeah, Gasly's going to be feeling that front right lock-up now. Can he stay close enough through 4, 5, 6 and 7 to get DRS back towards Leclerc for turn 11? If he doesn't, he's going to be in big trouble because Hamilton has joined the party. Hamilton in 8th is right on the back of Pierre Gasly in the Alpine. He might be shuffled back 2 places in a matter of corners here.
Yeah, Gasly is heading in the wrong direction. His teammate Esteban Ocon is about 5.5 seconds adrift of him, about 6 seconds really in 9th, but Lewis Hamilton is all up in Gasly's mirrors. He's down the inside of Gasly. Hamilton makes his way through nice and tidy from the 7-time champ. Hamilton up into 7th now. Could he try and hassle Leclerc? Let's see.
I think he can. He's within DRS range at the Ferrari, and he's on much fresher tyres. Hamilton is having a great recovery. Leclerc very sideways through turn 16. Sound you can hear is the Mercedes with Lewis Hamilton at the wheel. He's within DRS range of Charles Leclerc, who's had an underwhelming Grand Prix, and somehow is 14 seconds back from Sainz. So Ferrari in general not looking particularly strong. Hamilton hits the brakes, had a little feint to the inside there, but was way too far back. He'll have to wait for another lap, because even as he gets on the throttle out of 17, don't think he's going to be close enough for a move at turn 1.
No, DRS open for the Mercedes driver. He's not close enough, has a little look though. Leclerc holds the position for the time being. Sainz is in front by about 14 seconds. A reminder, Carlos Sainz does have a 5-second time penalty to be added on at the end for speeding in the pits.
Ahead of Fernando on track. We're that close to Perez? No, sorry, Sargent on track. Just going to say.
Russell getting his hopes up there for a moment, but no, it's the lap Logan Sargent, sadly.
Yeah, there's been a time where Alonso and Russell have been close on pace to Perez, but Perez is now 19.5 seconds clear of Fernando Alonso. Hamilton down the inside of Leclerc. There was a little bit of a space there, and Lewis Hamilton took it down the inside. Nice move. Leclerc tried to cover it, but didn't do enough.
3 laps to go of this Miami Grand Prix, the second iteration and the first of 3 races in the United States of America this year in Formula One. We'll head to the Circuit of the Americas in Austin, Texas, and the Las Vegas circuit later on in the year. Formula One truly cracking America, it seems, in 2023. But nice move from Hamilton, who gets in front of Leclerc. Move to the inside. This is the sound you're hearing of Hamilton just getting by-in from a replay. The crowd liking that one, standing in the grandstands.
Good move from Hamilton, and with a few laps to go, that's kind of all the battle's done.
No, hang on. Oh yeah, it is. Tsunoda is about 3 seconds off Magnussen, so that one's not going to appear.
Magnussen upped his pace, and I'm pleased that he did, actually, because I think Magnussen has deserved a point out of this Grand Prix. We heard from Günther Steiner earlier on. He said, from 4th position on the grid, if we could score a point, that would be good. And right now, they're in that position. 10th place for Kevin Magnussen as the 2 Red Bulls come through turn 17 to start the penultimate lap of the Grand Prix. 3 seconds between the 2. Verstappen has the fastest lap as well at the moment, which will be worth a bonus point if he keeps it through the last couple of laps. Perez does a personal best. He's keeping him in check, but I don't know how much Verstappen's really needing to lead on these mediums at the moment.
No, it's all looking rather tied up for Max Verstappen, Christian.
Absolutely, but yesterday Sir Lewis Hamilton wasn't confident of being able to make it into the top 10 at all, let alone beat a Ferrari. An impressive recovery from Lewis Hamilton, but what a disappointing afternoon for Charles Leclerc.
Well, for Haas's elation for keeping in front of Leclerc for so long, to the frustrations of Charles Leclerc, absolutely languishing now in 7th behind Lewis Hamilton. Well, he looks like he's going to finish where he started, really, for Charles Leclerc, and his teammate having the better of him in this race.
Yeah, it's been a little bit humbling for Ferrari, this Grand Prix. 5th and 7th at the flag, from 3rd and 7th on the grid. Sainz has dropped back. He's got a 5-second penalty to boot. It's not going to be enough to give Hamilton another place. He's 14 seconds back from the Spanish Ferrari driver ahead, but it's going to be a bit of a gulp for Fred Vasseur at the helm of Ferrari. They have been a bit exposed once again, even though, remember, they bought quite a big upgrade for this Grand Prix. New floor. It's the most crucial part of a Formula One car to get performance, the floor in this ground effect era. Ferrari bought a new one. They hope to be closer, and they are pretty far. Latest flex comes from Max Verstappen.
Just to rub salt into the wound of Sergio Perez, Verstappen steals back the fastest lap, 1:29.7 for the Dutchman as he embarks on his final lap. There is a bit of a battle brewing further back. It's not over points though. It's 4/10 the gap between Tsunoda and Stroll for 11th place. So battle for honour there really between the AlphaTauri and the Aston Martin.
Verstappen was 1.7 seconds quicker than Perez on that last lap. This has been a monster drive from Verstappen. This is more akin to where we were at the end of last year, where he could win from 10th, he could win from 15th, he could win from 7th, and he's going to win today from 9th. Comes into turn 12, the tight right-hander for the final time. Got a few corners to go, fiddle it through the chicane, little left, right, up the hill, and he's driven superbly, ticked all the boxes in this one.
Fantastic drive from Max Verstappen, who makes his way now up through the gears onto the long back straight. A few leaves laying on the asphalt. They quickly clear out of the way as the Red Bull breezes past up to over 300 kilometers an hour, down through the gears into the braking zone for the last time, into the left-hander, makes his way through. Max Verstappen coming round the final corner, the fight back from 9th. It's been cool, clean and clinical. Verstappen wins in Miami, 57 laps. And in the end, it's Max Verstappen on top. Sergio Perez started on pole, makes it a Red Bull 1-2. And then it's a little bit of a wait for Fernando Alonso, who gets back onto the podium. It's been a very consistent run for the Spaniard so far this season, who notches up a 4th third place finish as he slows down and crosses the line. Alonso rounds out the podium. But we're getting a little bit of a battle for that 11th place. I've warned you, Jolien. Lance Stroll, you're hearing.
Stay tuned, everyone. Stay tuned. Stroll on Tsunoda for 11th place. Going to the wire.
It might well be up through the gears. DRS wide open. And Tsunoda even has to move to defend at the end of the straight into 17. Just a couple of corners left. I think Tsunoda has got this one in hand. Battle for honour then for the AlphaTauri, who just misses out on a point after 2 consecutive 10th place finishes. It's an 11th place for Tsunoda. Stroll in behind on 12.
Well, you know what? That was an enjoyable Grand Prix. That was enjoyable.
I would agree.
Some good wheel-to-wheel action throughout the field. I just wish that Perez had more fight in him, a bit more pace in him fundamentally today to take the fight to Verstappen. The starting strategies gave us a nice prospect, but it was just a gulf between the two today. Verstappen extends his championship lead.
Yeah, good drive today, Max. So we made it harder for ourselves, but we'll have a look at what we could have done better for yesterday. But today was a very good drive. Well done.
I call that simply lovely. That was a good race all round, so thank you very much. That was really, really good. Also good for the team again.
Well done, Max. That was a mighty middle stint. That was really impressive on that on the hard tyre, and thanks for racing cleaning with your teammate today. It was great team performance, 1-2 in America, brilliant.
Yeah, that tyre lasted really nicely, and yeah, that was a good fight with Checo, but yeah, that was very good. Good day.
You know the worry here is that Perez started today on pole, Verstappen started 9th. Verstappen won, but he won easily. He didn't have to push when he put on the medium tyres, just a 1 lap to pass Perez, then it had him at arm's length. 1 lap just to cement the fastest lap of the Grand Prix, which he got by 8.5 tenths of a second over his teammate, as you'd expect on a medium tyre.
A tough weekend, but good points.
Yeah, well done, Checo. Well done, you gave it everything there, and great points today. Great points today. Well done.
Yeah, well done to the team.
Great, and thanks for being fair with the racing. You guys were very good today. Thank you.
Good job, guys.
It was nice racing, the brief amount of racing we had between those two.
It was. Perez is a good racer. We've seen it so many times, but he just needed to have more pace to have any chance of keeping Max behind. He didn't do enough in the first stint. He didn't do enough when Max was in 9th. He didn't make much of a gap to Alonso. There's a pat on the back from Perez and a shake of the hands with Verstappen as the Dutchman clambers out of the car. And yeah, he just needed more pace in there. And I was really up for seeing Red Bulls side by side, championship rivals battling out on track. We got it for a few corners, but you just had the feeling that it was a matter of time anyway for Verstappen today. He was just so good. Perez had to regroup. He's lost 8 points to Verstappen today. The gap will go to 14 because of Max's fastest lap. He'll have to regroup and go again.
He certainly will, as Verstappen celebrates with his team, runs over. Fernando Alonso does the same, but it's Max Verstappen who makes it back-to-back Miami Grand Prix wins. In fact, before him, only 4 drivers have ever won a World Championship F1 race from 9th on the grid, the most recent being Niki Lauda at the 1984 French Grand Prix in Dijon. How about that? Perez over to the team as well. Celebrates, handshakes all round. Didn't sound too downbeat over the radio, but not his day here in Miami, and makes his way straight over to Verstappen, and they share a smile and a conversation.
What was your prediction for the race? Alonso was going to win it.
Well, there wasn't as much drama or carnage as I thought there would be. I didn't think Alonso would win it on pure pace. There had to be, I thought rain might come. We didn't get the rain.
Oh, no.
It's not like I said Magnussen was going to win. That would have been a more bold choice. Come on. Who did you go for?
I think I went Verstappen, Perez, Alonso.
Yeah. Called Leclerc in 7th as well, as the 2 Ferraris debrief. Sainz and Charles Leclerc looking a little concerned after that race. Sainz, with that penalty, still able to hold on to 5th. But let's hear from our top 3. Fernando Alonso, Sergio Perez and Max Verstappen are with Jenson Button.
You're a 2-time Miami GP champion or winner. How does that feel from P9 on the grid?
Yeah, it was a good race. I mean, stayed out of trouble in the beginning, and then just had a clean race. Picked the cars off one by one, and then I could stay out really long on the hard tires, and that's where we, I think, made the difference today. And then a good little battle with Checo at the end. So we all kept it clean, and that's the most important. And great win today.
Does it feel that extra bit special when you've come through from so far back to beat your teammate right at the end of the race there?
Yeah, I mean, yesterday was of course a bit of a setback, but today we just kept it calm, kept it clean, and for sure winning a race from P9 is always very satisfying.
And whose idea was it to do a different strategy, starting on the hard tire?
Well, we started talking about it yesterday. We didn't know what the weather would do, but we were quite confident that this would pay off, and luckily it did today.
Great. Well, thank you, Max, for putting on a great show for us.
Yes.
Congrats. Checo. I'm sure it hurts a little bit finishing P2 after such a great lap in qualifying yesterday. As you can hear, the crowd are going wild for you out here. What are your words for them?
Yeah, I mean, I tried. I gave it all. I think the first thing was really poor with the graining that we had on that initial pace, and that compromised quite a lot our race, because we didn't have too much of a difference on tire. So, and Max was particularly strong today, so well-deserved win for him.
Yeah, well, you were saying about the places where you think you lost. Do you think maybe that there was too much looking after the tyres in the race, or not enough, or what do you think you could have done a bit better?
I think the medium initially was really poor, worse than expected, and I think that really compromised our pace. And then in all honesty, I think also Max had a tremendous pace on that hard tire, and I think I got to analyze what went wrong today, because we simply didn't have the pace.
Yeah, if you look at today as a bad race, you finished P2. We want to see you coming out fighting in the next one.
Yeah, certainly. Thanks.
Cheers, Checo. Fernando. What can we say? 4 podiums out of 5 races. The smile's there. It's great. Well, you're not back. You've always been there. The car's back.
The car is amazing, and a little bit of a lonely race today. Nothing really to do in front of us with the Red Bulls and behind us. Maybe we did expect a little bit stronger opposition, but the Ferraris, they were a little bit worse than expected today. So not easy. It's never easy, but it was a lonely race.
You still had a couple of good fights out there on track, obviously with Max, and keeping Carlos behind you in the race. Must have still been fun.
Yeah, it is always. And on the start, obviously, on the wrong side of the grid, we were a little bit worried, but everything was fine. We take the podium and going into the triple Imola, Monaco and Barcelona, which hopefully we can keep on going.
Well, we know what you're like, Fernando. 3rd place is nice, but we all know what you really want. So when are we going to see you challenging these guys?
I think at the beginning of the year, the podium was amazing. Now, after 4 podiums, we want obviously more. And at least a 2nd place, but the 2 Red Bulls, they are always
unbreakable, and they are always, you know, super fast. But as I said, maybe Monaco, maybe Barcelona, we have a possibility.
Great job, Fernando.
2009 World Champ Jenson Button speaking to our top three. Let's head back down to Christian.
The paddock's gone back to being complete chaos again, I'm pleased to say, as the top three drivers have their own... I'm not very good at these sort of cars, but their own... They look like a little sort of Miami Vice-style buggies that will pick them up and take them... I presume take them to the podium, and they say they've managed to do some very quick work and put the top three's name on them. I could just see Logan Sargent passing through. So what's going to happen is the drivers will be brought here, they will get on the buggy things in front of me, and then be taken through the complex to the podium. I've just ran that journey because I tried to get down to the podium, and goodness knows how they're going to manage that with the amount of people in these buggies. At least, well, several people are going to get run over, is my prediction. Oh, here's Max Verstappen being loaded into his buggy now. He looks like he's comfortable and sat in it. Checo's next door, and we're waiting on Fernando Alonso before this podium procession goes. It's a little bit like the King's coronation, I'm imagining. Not that I saw any of it, but much more American. Here we go, the first buggy's going. Max Verstappen. Oh, Fernando Alonso tries to get away first, but Verstappen's buggy cuts him off. Sergio Perez is down a place, he's down into third. Fernando looks incredibly nonplussed about the situation, sat in the back of his buggy. He looks like he'd rather be anywhere else in the world, frankly. And Checo's buggy's had to stop to pick up a cameraman. That will slow him down. And I'll now hand back up to you, Harry Benjamin. You'll be able to take us through the rest of the journey because they're going away from my distance now. That was some great racing down here in the paddock. Enjoyed that.
Yeah, Perez getting a little bit of ballast in the rear of his buggy with the form of one of the camera operators along with said camera, but they make their way through the complex that makes up this Miami paddock, which is essentially runs inside and out of the Hard Rock Stadium, which is home to the Miami Dolphins NFL team. It's hosted 6 Super Bowls, first opened back in 1987, and this temporary street circuit in Miami becoming the 11th track to host a Grand Prix in the USA. It will be Las Vegas, which becomes the 12th later on this year. But as the clouds continue to cast their eyes over this Miami International Autodrome in the coastal metropolis of Florida, it is Max Verstappen who makes it back-to-back Miami Grand Prix wins and picks up his 3rd win of the season in front of Sergio Perez. Fernando Alonso rounds out the top 3. Then it was George Russell, Carlos Sainz finished in the top 5. Hamilton, Leclerc, Gasly, Ocon, Magnussen with a hard-earned drive to steal the final points-paying position. Yuki Tsunoda in 11th in front of Stroll. Valtteri Bottas 13th. Then it was Albon, Hulkenberg the top 15. Zhou Guanyu was 16th. A miserable day for both McLarens. Lando Norris in 17th. Piastri was 19th, De Vries in between the two of them, and Logan Sargent, the Fort Lauderdale boy who grew up and first went karting just around the corner from this track, 20th and last after picking up front wing damage at the start of this Grand Prix. Well, Jolien, it was teed up to be a bit of a cracker. There wasn't as much carnage, I think, that we thought we might get in the early stages, but it was fairly interesting in the opening gambits.
Yeah, there wasn't any carnage, was there? I think Hamilton had a tap,
a few
with
front
Nico
wing
Hulkenberg.
skirmishes, really, yeah.
De Vries ploughed into the back of Norris, and apart from that, it was a pretty clean race. There was just some nice wheel-to-wheel fighting. It was just a shame, really, that first of all, the Red Bulls, they're in a league of their own still. Ferrari brought an upgrade. Mercedes will bring an upgrade to the next Grand Prix. It's not going to put them on par with Red Bull. They're just so far back. Russell finished 33 seconds away from Verstappen. And when Verstappen's a league ahead of Perez, you're never going to get a particularly interesting fight at the front, even though they started with a big handicap today.
Well, they've the top 3 have made their way in their buggies to the cool-down room. Verstappen first in with their very own bespoke Miami Dolphins NFL football jerseys hung up in the lockers. And let's see if we can have a little bit of a listen if there's going to be any kind of conversation. It's all fairly silent. Alonso has a sit down.
Yeah. What? Now, yeah, it's less. It's not as hot. It's a bit better now.
Yeah, the last day was Friday, no, I guess.
Yeah.
Today it's good. It's the right also. We're on the wrong side and
Max Verstappen saying it's a lot cooler, the temperatures by the sounds of things, a bit better as they all wrap a towel around their face, have a little watch of the race start. Jolene, what's it like in a cool down room?
Fairly standard. It's always more awkward when there's a camera listening to every word that you're saying. Still can't really hear what's going on.
What lap you got him?
13, 14, 14.
So they're just picking up on what lap Verstappen finally was trying to get through. And what was Alonso's prediction at the start? It was 25, wasn't it? Lap 25?
Yeah.
So he was about 10 laps over, really,
It was
for
15.
Alonso.
It was that quick.
Impressive stuff. Alonso then sat rather regally in one of the chairs. Verstappen having a little conversation. Perez watches on.
Peak weather chat. Peak weather chat.
Yeah, it is.
Between the top three, and now discussing who finished where.
Peak weather chat. Let's go back down to Christian then.
It's not all gone well for Red Bull today. Some of the FIA's barriers, Parc Fermé barriers, have just blown over in the wind and were so close to smashing into the side of Sergio Perez's car. That would have added insult to injury for Sergio Perez, wouldn't it? But I'm pleased to say a very large man, who's probably in earshot, has just put a very large weight on them now. So we very nearly, Miami Grand Prix has gone very well from an organisational point of view, but it very nearly went terribly wrong, and the FIA might have had to summon themselves to the stewards again for crashing their own barriers into the car. So a narrow disaster avoided here in the pit lane, I'm pleased to say.
Well, we are pleased to hear that. Christian, I mean, compared to when you were down on the grid, what's the atmosphere like now as we see Adrian Newey and the Red Bull team all starting to line up underneath the podium?
Well, I'm outside Red Bull, who unsurprisingly are having an absolutely lovely time. Big smiles on the faces here, and I can already see in the back of the garage, and this is a little bit of insight for those who aren't familiar with what happens in a garage straight after a race, that already people are moving from the Red Bull garage to the left of me into a fancy Formula One garage to the right of me, which seems to be serving cocktails. So some of the VIP people already helping themselves to cocktails. So, hello, Red Bull gentlemen. Thumbs up, Pete. Good for you guys today. Big thumbs up from Will, who's wearing a jazzy Miami hat, and big smile from him from the Red Bull team. So yeah, some of the posh people getting cocktails and big smiles on the faces of the Red Bull mechanics.
Lots of colourful arrays of shirts. We've had specialist helmets and liveries this weekend as the podium ceremony gets underway. Fernando Alonso first out and steps up to the third spot. Sergio Perez started on pole but just didn't have it compared to Max Verstappen. Perez in second. But it's Max Verstappen then who extends that championship lead at the top as we await for the Dutch national anthem.
1 to Max Verstappen.
The Austrian national anthem for the winning constructor Red Bull Racing, who have now won 5 out of 5 at the start of this Grand Prix season.
And he is
it's ominous, isn't it, Jolien, for Red Bull and Verstappen? That gap now 14 points between him and Sergio Perez, but it is only the end of round 5. Anything can happen. We go to a bit of a European leg next. We've got Imola in a couple of weeks, Monaco, Spain, all coming up fairly quickly. It's hard to imagine that Verstappen's going to let up in this pace, but a chance for Perez to come back, perhaps. A bad day for Perez in second place is not awful.
Well, anything below second place with the car they've got is awful. That's the problem. They're so far ahead of everyone. The Golf is there. Again, Ferrari bought upgrades, they're no better off here. Aston Martin treading water. Hopefully we'll see some improvement from them. I thought Alonso drove really well today to be fairly safe in third. Mercedes struggling in qualifying. The race pace was pretty good for them to finish 4th and 6th in the end. Was a great return after having a pretty terrible one-lap pace. But in all of it, none of them are close to Red Bull. So it's Verstappen v Perez. You'd think at the start of the season, if it's a Red Bull fight for the championship, well, Verstappen will be champion, based on everything we've seen. Perez has given us maybe a glimmer of hope in the first 4 races, but this was a real stamp of authority from Verstappen. And you know, in my heart of hearts, Verstappen is the stronger driver. He's shown it emphatically today. Perez will have his days. He may well win again this year. I'm sure he will win again this year. And maybe with Monaco coming up, it'll be a chance to keep in touch. But when Perez wins, it's a superb drive. It's his best ever drive to win by 2 seconds from Verstappen. Verstappen then the next week will have a drive like today, where he's gone from 9th to beat his teammate on pole. And that's the difference between the two. And over 23 races, it is hard to see someone stopping Verstappen, even Sergio Perez.
Well, there's all smiles on the podium from all 3 of our drivers. The champagne gets poured and sprayed. The Aston Martin team with elation on their faces as they look up to Fernando Alonso, who scores a 4th podium for them with another 3rd place finish. Fantastic result, and he slides down the Ferrari Trento to the Aston Martin engineers, who catch it. Good catch in the end, big bottle to catch, but nicely done, and a fist bump in the air as well. Lovely podium celebration scenes as everybody starts to celebrate. Let's head down to Christian.
I was just about to go and see live on the radio whether Brooklyn Beckham wanted to have a conversation. I'm stood outside Mercedes and he all of a sudden hurriedly ran away, and I thought, oh, Brooklyn. The reason why he's hurriedly ran away is because he's been summoned by Toto Wolff. So at the back of the Mercedes garage right now, what does Toto Wolff do after the race? He stands and has a conversation and explains how it all worked with Brooklyn Beckham. His dad David was here last year, and I think Jenny Gow spoke to him on the grid. So I was hoping to, you know, move forward a generation and grab Brooklyn, but it wasn't to be. So yeah, Brooklyn Beckham currently sat in the back of the stood in the back of the Mercedes garage with Toto Wolff.
There's always next time, Christian. Yeah. Thank you for trying, though. Always appreciate it. Jolien, Charles Leclerc, bad day in the office for Ferrari. Falls down to 7th in the drivers' standings. Could only come home 7th. In the end, struggled to get past Kevin Magnussen. Ferrari in general not looking brilliant, but Leclerc in particular, not a fun Miami.
Started 7th. When he joined Ferrari, he replaced number 7, Kimi Raikkonen. It's all aligning for Leclerc, but not in the right place at the moment. And Ferrari, they're just not there at the moment in terms of race pace. I'm excited for Monaco for them, because that will be a real shot where Leclerc, if he's got qualifying pace like he did in Baku and doesn't hit the wall, can put it on pole, and there the Red Bull straight line speed, well, it won't be anywhere near as crucial as it is on a circuit like this or Baku. I think the tracks are favouring Red Bull a little more than some others maybe will in the coming races with these long straights. But it doesn't really matter where. It's only Monaco or Singapore really where I think it's so tight and twisty Ferrari might come into play, and then it's difficult to overtake as well. And what's a shame with this championship is if Red Bull were just a bit slower, we would have a humdinger of the first 5 races. We've had Alonso there, we've had Hamilton there, we've had Leclerc there. Sainz for a while was running really well. George Russell was winning in Melbourne. All of these guys in Mercedes, Aston Martins and Ferraris have had moments of being best of the rest in 3rd place. But the 2 Red Bulls are just so far up the road that when Verstappen easily beats Perez, it's not a great race.
Christian, let's look a little bit further down the grid. McLaren, disaster. We didn't really talk about them much because really there was not a lot going on. In the end, Norris, the best of the McLarens, in 17th. Piastri, after a good start, could only manage 19th. But we'll talk about days to forget. Certainly one for both McLaren boys.
I've been checking in with McLaren a lot over the weekend, and obviously things picked up last time around in Baku, and Oscar, of course, got some points on the board for his first points in Australia, so things looked like they were starting to pick up. Oscar Piastri, the Lando Norris's teammate at McLaren. But I sort of got the impression from very early doors that McLaren were expecting this to be a tricky weekend for them. So I don't think this weekend has come to any surprise to them. Listen, they are where they are. I spoke to Lando Norris at the very start of the season, and he said to me that his aim for this season was to get themselves into a place for next season where they can be competitive. Lando Norris was writing this season off before it had even started, which shows you where McLaren are. There are big upgrades coming. McLaren are going to be bringing upgrades, and they're going to be very careful about where they do in front of the McLaren garage now. So in a few races' time, you will start to see upgrades from McLaren, and there is optimism that can improve things into the second half of the season. They don't expect to be like this all season, but I think they did expect to be there this weekend. You know, one of the slowest cars on the grid, a really miserable weekend for McLaren.
Yeah, well, let's hope it picks up for them as we head into a little bit of a European leg. Imola up next in a couple of weeks. Couple of minutes left of our live broadcast. Palmer, a few words on some good results. Both Alpines in the points, and Kevin Magnussen held on for the final point in the Haas. Nice drives from those 3.
Yeah, they needed it. The Alpines particularly. Gasly and Ocon both in the points. Gasly started 5th in this one, had a pretty quiet race, but was there in the end to pick up 4 points. Ocon did his favourite tactic of going very long into the Grand Prix and had fresh tyres at the end, but had a little bit too much to do to get any more than 9th. Good for Alpine though. After 2 races of not scoring anything, they pick up 6 points, which in their fight with McLaren, really, they're looking now for 5th in the constructors with the top 4 fairly set in, I think, with the pace that we've got. But that's important for them, and really important for Kevin Magnussen, who's come under pressure after the arrival of Nico Hülkenberg at Haas. Hülkenberg has been very strong in one lap pace particularly. Magnussen's come under pressure, and K-Mag was superb this weekend, 4th on the grid, and some really good battling out there. It was fun to watch him fight and fight and fight with Charles Leclerc.
It was a really hard-earned point though, wasn't it, Christian?
Yeah, very hard-earned point. And I just sort of thought, Jolene, with the point on Charles Leclerc there, we talk about hard-earned points. That's what we need to see from Charles Leclerc, obviously more than 1 point, but we need to see him maximising what he has, don't we? It's all very well. We know Ferrari haven't got the pace. Carlos Sainz, right at the start of the weekend, said to me, we're not going to have the pace to challenge Red Bull. That was always going to be the case. But when you're a driver of the calibre of Charles Leclerc, you've got to be looking at getting every single bit out of it. And it just felt like this weekend, and he was his own harshest critic in qualifying, he knows it himself, that he just wasn't near that.
Yeah, he just wasn't, Jolene.
No, he had an off weekend, was just a little bit in the doldrums. Crash yesterday, not at it really today, but the Ferrari's not good. I mean, he was pretty good last weekend, wasn't he, Leclerc? So I guess he can have a bad day and bounce back.
Well, look, we're going to do more debrief and discussion in the Checkered Flag podcast, so have a look out for that on BBC Sounds, wherever you get your podcasts. But my thanks go to Jolien Palmer, Christian Hugel for his efforts down in the pit lane. I've been Harry Benjamin. What a hard-earned win, clean and clinical in the end for Max Verstappen, who extends his championship lead 14 points now to his teammate Sergio Perez. This has been an IMG production for BBC Radio 5 Live. Up next, it's Stephen Nolan. That's after your latest news and sport with Rebecca Davis.
Listen on BBC Sound.